Chapter 507. Targeted. The dark golden light surged. There seemed to be the sound of waves surging as it leisurely reverberated across the land. This continued for nearly 5 minutes before the light gradually disappeared. Everyone's gaze was immediately directed towards the mysterious heavenly divine steel. The golden light gradually converged and poured into the body of a slender figure kneeling on one knee. His upper body was naked as the golden light flowed under his skin. His previously shattered body had already been repaired. Furthermore, as the golden light surged, there seemed to be a faint pressure being emitted. Countless people were envious. At the same time, they were also shocked. The current Qin Feng gave them a great pressure. Even if there was no spiritual energy fluctuation, just the aura that came from his body made them feel a great pressure. Yi Wu and Xiao Ni's gazes narrowed. At this moment, they could sense a dangerous aura from Qin Feng's body. In the past, although Qin Feng had heavily injured Yi Wu and fought with Xiao and I, the former was due to special circumstances, while the latter suppressed his strength because he did not want to bully the weak. In fact, in their opinion, Qin Feng was not bad and was one of the top in the younger generation. However, there was still a large gap between them and him. If they were to fight, they were confident that they could easily suppress him. But now, this feeling had become a lot more vague. Everything originated from Qin Feng's transformation. I never imagined that the full score would be such a reward. Looks like I have to work harder in the mysterious, desolate spiritual energy competition. If this brat catches up to me, how am I going to pursue little Wu? Xiao and I secretly said in his heart. Yi Wu glanced at Xiao and I. She could understand what this fellow was thinking from the change in his expression. She couldn't help but roll her eyes. She really couldn't do anything to this pestering, extremely narcissistic fellow who didn't learn his lesson no matter how she beat him. Wife, although we are all heaven grade, there are no precise restrictions on how to absorb the mysterious desolate spiritual energy. Why don't we work together and directly control the mysterious desolate spiritual energy on the second level? At that time, won't we decide how to split it? Xiao and I approached Yi Wu with a wretched smile. Yi Dance rolled her eyes at him and said, "Do you think you can control them just because you want to? There are so many people here, and you think they'll give in to you? Who dares to disagree?" Xiao and I glared and said, "Whoever disagrees, just beat them until they agree." Yi Dance was speechless. She curled her lips and said, "Don't forget the rules. Not only are there people from the royal family, but there are also the forces of the 7 great families. Do you dare to offend all of them?" If Xiao and I really dared to do that, Great Yen City would probably not be able to tolerate him. Hee, I was just joking. Xiao and I grinned and changed the topic. We naturally can't offend all the clans, but there are bound to be a few that you don't like. When the time comes, we'll teach them a lesson. Take that Song clan's son-in-law for example. Who knows, he might have hidden other rewards from the Tianji divine steel. Aren't you interested? This. Yi Dance tilted her head as light surged in her eyes. Besides, we won't break the rules. We won't beat anyone up. In short, we'll just sit beside whoever we don't like. With our 9th stage strength, if we're sandwiched in the middle, we won't be able to capture the exotic desolate spirit energy. Take Qin Feng for example. As long as we surround him, no matter how strong he is, he won't be able to get much exotic desolate spirit energy. When the time comes, we can use this to threaten him and force him to hand over the benefit. Xiao and I instigated Yi Dance. Her gaze paused on Qin Feng as her beautiful eyes blinked. After a moment, Yi Dance smiled gently and said, "Okay, let's do it." While he was still reveling in the joy of his body's improvement, Qin Feng suddenly sneezed. He touched his nose. Why did he sneeze? Who's insulting me? His gaze moved and soon stopped on Yi Dance and Xiao and I, and the corner of his mouth twitched fiercely. The two of them glanced at him discreetly. One of them pursed her lips and smiled charmingly, while the other was grinning from ear to ear. His smile was extremely wretched. There was no doubt that these two were plotting against him. Wung. Suddenly, the heavenly secret pavilion shook, and then endless brilliance swept out from it. The brilliance had two colors, purple and blue. Rays of light swept out, and every time a person was wrapped up, they would be sent back to the heavenly secret pavilion. Those who were assessed as Earth grade were enveloped in purple light and brought back to the first floor of the heavenly secret pavilion. The blue light swept up those assessed as Heaven grade and returned to the second floor. Qin Feng was enveloped by the blue light and didn't have any resistance. His vision instantly became blurred, and then his vision gradually became clear. Suddenly, his eyes widened in shock. The scene of the square tower as he imagined did not appear. Instead, it was a space of nothingness. There was no sky or earth. His whole body was suspended in the void, and there was no front, back, left, or right. It was as if this was a chaotic world where heaven and earth were not separated. There was no order or law. In this void there were praying mats floating, and there was nothing else. Qin Feng was stunned. This was the heavenly secret pavilion? Where was the exotic, desolate spiritual energy? Where was the so-called fortune? If it weren't for other people nearby, he would have suspected that the heavenly secret pavilion had made a mistake. You need to sense the exotic, desolate spiritual energy. Remembering the Song clan's reminder, Qin Feng slowly closed his eyes and released his perception. Soon, he felt that the rhythm of the surrounding air was occasionally unusual. He suddenly opened his eyes and stretched out a hand. Spiritual light flickered, and he caught a ray of light that swept past him. The light flashed and turned into a thumb-sized stream of air. The purity of the stream was unimaginable. Moreover, aside from the density and purity, there was also a very strange power. As if knowing what Qin Feng was thinking, the demon eye said, "When heaven and earth first separated, the exotic desolate spiritual energy swept through. That strange power is the exotic desolate spiritual energy." Qin Feng nodded. He raised his eyes and glanced over. Occasionally, he could see a flash of profound light. "Qin Feng, although we can't fight here, we don't prohibit non-violent snatching." Song Su and Song Yuan appeared beside Qin Feng. The latter reminded, "Many people may target you. We need to work together." Hearing this, Qin Feng smiled and said, "Don't worry, I have my ways. When the time comes, sit far away from me to avoid being affected." As he spoke, Qin Feng directly jumped onto a praying mat, and then motioned Song Yuan and Song Su not to come over. Seeing this, the two didn't say much and each found a praying mat to sit on. Qin Feng sat cross-legged on the praying mat. Not long after, Zhou flew over and said with a smile, "Qin Feng, are you interested in doing something big?" "Haha, I couldn't ask for more." Qin Feng nodded. However, just as he finished speaking, Mo Sun, Yu Lei, Lei Jiuxiao, and many others sat around him and surrounded him. Their eyes were full of mockery and sneers. "It's so lively here. I'll come and play too." With a flash of light, Xiao and I appeared beside Qin Feng and sat down. Then, he smiled at Mo Sun and the others, whose expressions didn't change, and said, "Don't worry, I'm only interested in the son-in-law of the Song family." Ha ha! Everyone laughed knowingly. Although the battle in the palace had been stopped, how could Xiao and I let it go so easily? This move was probably to deal with Qin Feng. Chapter 508. Devour in self-defense. Yiwu's appearance stunned these people, but they soon understood what was going on. In the finals, Yiwu suffered a lot at Qin Feng's hands, and in the end, she fell for his and Zhou Mo's tricks. She was probably holding back her anger. She was just thinking about venting. Yu Lei, Mo Sun, and the others laughed even more happily. With this, Qin Feng wouldn't be able to snatch a single strand of exotic desolate world energy. 2 ninth stage heavenly realms flanked him from left and right. If Qin Feng could snatch even a strand of exotic desolate world energy, he would burn incense to the heavens. Why are all of you gathered here? Qin Feng looked left and right with a curious expression. We're all in the same boat. Naturally, we have to advance and retreat together. Xiao and I patted Qin Feng's shoulder and smiled. In the distance, the Zhou family, supreme mystery sect, and the imperial family looked over and secretly shook their head. Qin Feng was surrounded by so many people. Even if he didn't say anything, the heavenly secret pavilion's good fortune this time was almost over. Song Su and Song Yuan's expressions were quite ugly. They didn't expect that even Yi Wu and Xiao and I would target Qin Feng. With this, no matter how strong Qin Feng was, he wouldn't be able to snatch much exotic desolate world energy from 2 9th stage Heavenly Realm Masters. Aren't you guys going too far? There are so many people here, but why are you all focusing on my spot? Qin Feng frowned. Xiao and I grinned and didn't reply. Everyone, isn't it too much to target Qin Feng? Song Yuan and Song Yuan were about to speak when Huang Fuyao rushed over and said with a slight frown. Mo Sun, Yulei, and the others' expressions changed. The first princess was actually helping Qin Feng. This was beyond their expectations. Hee, Sister Jeannie, who's targeting him? It's not like this seat is his, why can't others take it? Xiao and I laughed. Huang Fuyao rolled his eyes at him. Just as he was about to speak, Yi Dance spoke up from the side. First princess, don't meddle in other people's business. To put it bluntly, in this place, everyone is using a non-violent method. If there is a grudge, then there is a grudge. If there is a grudge, then there is a grudge. If there is a grudge, then there is a grudge. Her words were very direct. She was here to diss Qin Feng. Huang Fuyao couldn't be bothered to argue with these two. Moreover, she could use her status to suppress others, but she couldn't suppress these two. She said to Qin Feng, come over to my side. The baptism of the exotic desolate spiritual qi is very important. Imperial Father probably doesn't want to know that I was disturbed when I was absorbing the exotic desolate spiritual qi, causing the baptism to fail. As soon as she said this, not only did Yulei and the others' expressions change, but even Yi Dance and Xiao Ni's eyes narrowed. The two of them looked at each other and smiled helplessly. Huang Fuyao's words were very obvious. If she was disturbed when she was absorbing the exotic desolate spiritual qi, her imperial father would definitely not allow it. They could ignore Huang Fuyao's protection of Qin Feng, but they didn't dare to interfere with Huang Fuyao's absorption of the exotic desolate spiritual qi. No matter what, she was still the first princess of the imperial family. With her status, offending her was equivalent to slapping the imperial family's face. This was something that no one dared to do. After all, no matter when, the imperial family still had to have respect for the control of the great Yin Empire. If Qin Feng really went over to Huang Fuyao's side, they really wouldn't be able to do anything. Qin Feng was also surprised that Huang Fuyao would actually help him. However, he didn't want to casually owe Huang Fuyao a favor. Thank you very much, First Princess. However, I also like to have fun. Since everyone likes me so much, how can I spoil everyone's fun? Seeing that Huang Fuyao was about to say something, Qin Feng secretly transmitted a message. Thank you for your help. However, I have my own ways to resolve the current situation. Huang Fuyao was stunned. Shortly after, he nodded secretly and didn't bother about it anymore. Everyone was puzzled by Qin Feng's rejection. They didn't understand why he didn't agree to such a good opportunity. Could it be that he couldn't tell what the people around him wanted to do? However, although they were puzzled, Qin Feng was still here, and they couldn't be bothered with him. Little girl from the Zhou family, are you very close to Qin Feng? Do you also like to join in the fun? Then you can also stay here. Yi Dance looked at Zhou Imo with a smile. Obviously, she was also resentful towards Zhou Imo for what happened that day. Momo, come back. Seeing the situation here, Zhou Imo hurriedly called Zhou Imo back. Qin Feng's place was already a dead end. Whoever followed him would be unlucky. Zhoumo's big eyes flashed, and she immediately shook her head. Sister Dance, you misunderstood me. I only came to tell Qin Feng that I rejected his idea of cooperating with me. I also wanted to tell him not to have any ideas about me and not to harass me. I'm still young and have never thought about the matters between men and women. As soon as she said this, everyone was stunned. They stared blankly at Qin Feng. They didn't expect him to have such thoughts about Zhoumo. Qin Feng, come out. I want to fight you one-on-one. Zhoumo was so angry that his face couldn't be any darker. No wonder Zhoumo told him that it was Qin Feng's credit that they could last 6 days in the Spirit River. It turned out that he had already set his sights on his sister at that time. Qin Feng was also stunned. When did he propose to cooperate with her? Wasn't she the one who proposed it at the banquet? Also, what did she mean by not having any ideas about her? Harassing her? What relationship between men and women? This was obviously a blatant framing. You wretched girl! Qin Feng jumped off the futon angrily and came in front of Zhoumo. He grabbed her 2 beautiful braids that stood up to the sky like horns. Ah! Zhoumo punched Qin Feng in the chest, broke free from Qin Feng's control, and quickly ran away. Wretched girl, remember this. I will find you again. Qin Feng shouted angrily. Other than the flower demon, he had never seen such a shameless person. Her ability to frame others was superb. I will remember you too, Qin Feng. If you dare to pester my sister again, I will not rest until you die. Zhou Xuanwu said with a dark face. Let me tell you, your sister is going to be unlucky. I will pester her again. Qin Feng gasped for breath. Being labeled as harassing an innocent woman for no reason, anyone would feel aggrieved. Sitting back on the futon, Qin Feng took a few deep breaths and calmed down. His time in the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets was limited, so he did not have the mind to think about anything else. Everyone entered a state of cultivation and absorbed the exotic desolate spirit qi in this space. It could be seen that in every direction mysterious light was constantly flickering. Under the absorption of these people, the exotic desolate spirit qi was clearly beginning to gather. And in these directions, Qin Feng's side had the most exotic desolate spirit qi. Because of the large number of people, the suction force was also stronger. All the nearby exotic desolate spirit qi was being sucked over. And Qin Feng, who was in the center of the crowd, did not absorb a single strand of exotic desolate spirit qi. As long as it entered his absorption range, it would immediately be swallowed by Yi Wu or Xiao and I. Seeing the situation here, the others secretly shook their heads. With so many people targeting him, Qin Feng's trip to the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets was probably meaningless. I say, is everyone really going to go overboard? You won't give me any leftovers? Qin Feng said. Everyone sneered and ignored him. Seeing this, Qin Feng's mouth twitched. To be honest, he was really embarrassed to use the 100 Calamity heaven-swallowing technique to bully others. But now, I should be doing this in self-defense. He chuckled, then slowly closed his eyes. His hands formed a seal, and his 10 fingers flew, leaving afterimages. Chapter 509. Acting Tough Gets Struck by Lightning. Wang. A formless wave spread out from Qin Feng's body. Shortly after, the entire region suddenly trembled. Profound light flickered crazily and converged towards Qin Feng. What's going on? Yi Wu, Xiao and I, and the others were all surprised. Why was the exotic desolate world energy they had absorbed flying away uncontrollably? This direction, everyone suddenly looked away and their pupils shrank as shock appeared on their faces. Their exotic desolate world energy was actually being sucked away by Qin Feng. How was this possible? There were 2 9th-stage Heavenly Realm Masters and more than a dozen half-step 9th-stage Heavenly Realm Masters here. How could Qin Feng steal from their mouths? But even if they couldn't believe it, this scene still appeared in front of their eyes. Increase absorption. Everyone quickly stabilized their bodies and used their own methods to increase the baptism in their bodies. The corner of Qin Feng's mouth was lifted into a mocking arc as he sensed everyone's situation. Immediately, his devouring power increased and the dozen-plus people around him began to stagger. It was as though they were being continuously sucked over by Qin Feng in the turbulent flow of water. What a powerful suction! Xiao Ni's face changed and his spirit energy surged to resist this suction. When the others saw this, they also hurriedly used their spirit energy to resist and stabilize their bodies. But under this strong suction, the amount of exotic desolate world energy they absorbed was very little. 70 to 80% of it was snatched away by Qin Feng. How is this possible? There are so many of us, how can we not be able to snatch it from him? Everyone, don't hold back, Yulei said. Everyone nodded and desperately urged their own methods to increase the suction. You're still holding on, Qin Feng sneered in a low voice. His devouring force was suddenly activated to the maximum, and an even more terrifying suction force erupted. That kind of power was so fierce that it seemed to have formed a vortex of air around him. The vortex was getting bigger and bigger, and all the spiritual qi in the vicinity of the vortex would be sucked away by the vortex no matter how hard others tried. In the end, it was even more terrifying. Those people couldn't control their own bodies and were surrounded by the vortex. They were swirling around Qin Feng and constantly getting closer to Qin Feng in the center. Everyone's expression changed, because they noticed something even more terrifying. Qin Feng not only sucked away the exotic desolate spirit qi around them, but even the spirit qi in their bodies showed signs of uncontrollably leaving their bodies. How could this be? At this moment, even Yi Wu and Xiao and I couldn't hide their shock. They were 9th stage heaven realm cultivators, but they couldn't control the spirit energy in their bodies. The people in the distance were also dumbfounded. They only saw Qin Feng sitting there with a dignified look on his face, and the dozen or so people surrounding him were like spinning tops, rapidly spinning around him. Is this even possible? Ai Tianxing, Luan Yihua, and the others were all dumbfounded. On the praying mat, Qin Feng no longer had the energy to pay attention to the situation outside. He felt the beauty of the exotic desolate spirit qi. The exotic desolate spirit qi that was sucked into his body was completely compatible with his body, and there was no need to refine it at all. Moreover, the exotic desolate spirit qi didn't enter the qi sea like spirit qi, but spread throughout every corner of his body. No, to be precise, it permeated every part of his body. The exotic desolate spirit qi wasn't spirit qi in the true sense, but the energy from the beginning of the world. Its effect was indescribable. No wonder it said that the baptism of the heavenly secret pavilion can lay the foundation of the 9th stage. Qin Feng deeply agreed. The so-called 9th stage heaven realm, as the name implied, was to be in harmony with the world, and the most direct way to be in harmony with the world was to let one's body be in harmony with the world's energy. Therefore, at the peak of the half-step 9th stage heaven realm, if one wanted to cross this threshold, they could only constantly compress their spirit qi, and the direction of this compression was the flesh and blood of the body. This was an extremely complicated process that required time to settle down. However, the exotic desolate spirit qi didn't need to be at the peak of the half-step 9th stage heaven realm to be in harmony with the body. This was a supreme opportunity for any cultivator. Of course, wanting to enter the 9th stage heaven realm wasn't something that could be done overnight, but there was no doubt that with this baptism, when one's strength improved in the future, the probability of entering the 9th stage heaven realm would greatly increase. In a sense, this had helped them lower the threshold of entering the 9th stage heaven realm. I wonder when they will wake up. Qin Feng sighed in his heart. His right hand held the jade pendant and the longevity flower, cutting off a portion of the exotic desolate spirit qi he had swallowed and continuously pouring it into the jade pendant. He already had the longevity flower and the exotic desolate spirit qi. As for how to awaken Qin Yao and Gong Xiaoxi, that would be up to the demonic eye. In the end, everyone in the vortex couldn't hold on any longer and left in a sorry state. Inside the vortex, not to mention absorbing the exotic desolate spirit qi, even their own spirit qi was being sucked out of their bodies. If this continued, they would sooner or later die from their spirit qi being sucked dry. Damn Qin Feng, just you wait. Yiwu also escaped, her beautiful eyes fiercely staring at Qin Feng. She had only suffered 2 losses in her life. The first was in the Flame City Guild tournament, and the other was now. It could be said that both of her losses were caused by Qin Feng. This kind of method is really fucking terrifying. Xiao and I smacked his lips. He didn't have the jealousy in Yu Lei's and Mo Sun's eyes. On the contrary, he was very curious and admiring. His breadth of mind was the same as his personality. He was carefree and not a narrow-minded person. Sensing that everyone had scattered like birds and beasts, Qin Feng opened his eyes and pretended to be at a loss. Everyone, why are you all leaving? Everyone's mouth twitched, but they couldn't be bothered with him. Qin Feng looked at Yiwu, whose beautiful face was slightly gloomy, and said loudly, "Sister Yi, don't you like to be lively? Come, let's have fun together." Hearing this, Yiwu's beautiful face instantly turned red, and she angrily stared at Qin Feng. "Zhou family's little Momo, come over too. Let's have fun together." Qin Feng looked at Zhou Mo again. Zhou Mo's braids were trembling with anger, his pair of eyes fiercely staring at Qin Feng. "Ha ha ha!" Qin Feng looked up to the sky and laughed. Seeing that the people who were against him were defeated, he was very happy. "Come, everyone come over." Seeing that no one was approaching, Qin Feng took the initiative to fly towards Yu Lei, Mo Sun, and the rest. He released his devouring power and forcefully absorbed their exotic desolate spirit qi. Everyone gathered together and resisted for a while, but they realized that it was useless. In the end, they all scattered. "Come, don't run away." Qin Feng went to greet them one by one. In the end, even Xiao and I and Yiwu were taken care of by him. Everyone's expression was very ugly, and they were also very shocked. What kind of method was Qin Feng using? So many of them couldn't snatch the exotic desolate spirit qi from him. Now, the area around him was a danger zone, and no one could snatch a strand of exotic desolate spirit qi from him. "Qin Feng, don't go overboard." In the end, those people couldn't take it anymore. With him pestering them endlessly, how could they peacefully absorb the exotic desolate spirit qi? "Did I break the rules?" Qin Feng sneered and approached them. These people just found a place to settle down and immediately fled. "Hee, Zhou family's little Momo, come over and have fun." Qin Feng had a smile on his face as he flew towards Zhou Mo Zhou Xuanwu, and a few other Zhou family's disciples' expression immediately changed. If Qin Feng came closer, they would not be able to keep their position. "Hey, don't come over. Let's talk nicely." Zhou Mo was so frightened that he almost jumped up. "Didn't I come here to talk nicely?" Qin Feng laughed loudly. Wherever he passed, no one dared to come close and they all fled. Rumble! But at this time, lightning suddenly descended from the sky and struck Qin Feng head-on. Qin Feng flew out, his body emitting green smoke. The others were also dumbfounded. How could there be lightning? Just as they thought about it, lightning struck down one after another, and all of them were aimed at Qin Feng's body, while the others were safe and sound. Acting cool really gets struck by lightning. You've received your retribution. You can continue to show off. Now you'll be honest. Chapter 510. Frantic plundering. Who would have thought that at this time, the lightning tribulation would descend from the heavens and strike Qin Feng crazily. It was truly satisfying. Previously, they had been bullied by Qin Feng until they had to flee in a sorry state. Now that they saw him being struck by lightning, their hearts were filled with joy. As expected, evil people will be punished by the heavens. If you show off too much, you'll be struck by lightning. Someone laughed. After being struck by lightning a few times, Qin Feng immediately understood that this had nothing to do with showing off. It was because the 100-calamity heaven-devouring art had improved again. This was the law-devouring tribulation. Ha ha! Let the heavenly tribulation come more fiercely. He shouted to resist the lightning tribulation. Being struck by lightning was a good thing. It meant that the 100-calamity heaven-devouring art had improved, and its devouring power had reached a new level. Everyone looked at him in surprise. This guy must have been struck silly. How could he be so happy after being struck by lightning? Soon, Qin Feng succeeded in transcending the tribulation. It's better to have this kind of small tribulation a few more times. Qin Feng was not satisfied. He had learned from the demonic eye that the 100-calamity heaven-devouring art needed to transcend 100 tribulations to reach perfection. Within the 100 tribulations, there were 9 major tribulations and 90 minor tribulations. After 99 tribulations, there would be the final tribulation, the devouring tribulation. Generally speaking, 10 minor tribulations meant 1 major tribulation. The last time he had transcended a major tribulation was when he broke through to the spirit-detecting realm in the spiritual space. During this period, he had also transcended several minor tribulations. After carefully counting, this should be the 7th major tribulation. A major tribulation, a leap. Qin Feng muttered. Only after a major tribulation could the 100-calamity heaven-devouring art make a great leap. However, although this was only a minor tribulation, the 100-calamity heaven-devouring art had also improved. Especially now, Qin Feng could feel that the range of his devouring had increased by more than 2 times, but the strength of his devouring had not changed. Let's begin. Don't waste time with them. I need more exotic desolate spiritual qi. The demonic eye's voice sounded in Qin Feng's mind. Activate the Dao Yen mode. Qin Feng nodded. The Dao Yen mode could allow him to enter an ethereal state, allowing him to unleash any of his moves to the greatest extent. Naturally, the 100-calamity heaven-devouring art was one of them. He formed a seal with both hands. In his sea of qi, the Taoist seed spun and Taoist qi gushed out. Seeing that Qin Feng had easily passed through the lightning tribulation, many of them gnashed their teeth in anger. The punishment that the heavens had given this fellow was a little too light. What is he doing? Someone asked. Who cares what he's up to? We just need to keep a distance of 30 meters from him. Everyone retreated far away, quietly absorbing the exotic desolate spirit qi. No one paid any attention to Qin Feng. Quietly floating in the void, Qin Feng's body rippled slightly on the surface of his body. His eyes slowly opened, and white light surged within them. Dao Yin mode. 100 calamities. Devour. 1. An invisible wave of qi spread out from his body. Wherever it passed, all the exotic desolate spirit qi was sucked into his body. At this moment, everyone on the second floor suddenly opened their eyes and looked at Qin Feng in disbelief. Their eyes were filled with horror because they found that even though they were 30 meters away from Qin Feng, the exotic desolate spirit qi around them was still being sucked away. Not enough. Qin Feng shouted. The ripples that had slowed down spread out fiercely again, almost enveloping everyone present. 100 meters. The wave of qi spread out for a radius of 100 meters before stopping. Within this radius, all the exotic desolate spirit qi was under Qin Feng's control. They could even see that in this area of light, the entrances were constantly flashing and converging towards Qin Feng in a very orderly manner. No matter how they tried to stop it, it was useless. What the hell? Yi Wu's pretty face was filled with shock. She was nearly 80 meters away from Qin Feng, but the exotic desolate spirit qi around her was completely out of her control. Qin Feng, what are you doing? In the end, she couldn't help but ask. Qin Feng glanced at her and ignored her. He sat cross-legged on the futon with a solemn expression and desperately devoured all the exotic desolate spirit chi within a radius of 100 meters. Under his crazy plundering, the others could only squeeze at the edge of the second floor with a bitter face. Although there was no clear boundary here and it was all void, the amount of exotic desolate spirit chi was limited in this space. And this space was occupied by Qin Feng alone. In this regard, everyone was helpless. This kind of devouring was incomprehensible to them, and they couldn't resist it with any means. For example, Yiwu and Xiao and I, they were ninth-stage Heaven Realm powerhouses. If they were far enough away from Qin Feng, they could compete with his baptism. However, if the baptism of the two sides reached a stalemate, the exotic desolate spirit chi would disintegrate and disappear as if it had been devoured. This had little to do with the strength of the suction. In short, no one could absorb a single strand of exotic desolate spirit chi within 100 meters. At this time, even Ai Tianxing, Luan, Yihua, Li Hen, and those who had nothing to do with Qin Feng were in trouble. They could only keep retreating and keeping their eyes on Qin Feng. It was just that the amount of exotic desolate spirit chi at the edge was much less, far from being comparable to the center. This guy. Zhou Mo pursed her lips and her big eyes flashed for a while. She turned to Zhou Xuanwu and said, "Brother, follow me." With that, she plunged into Qin Feng's devouring range. Mo. Zhou Xuanwu was shocked, but it was too late to stop her. He could only follow with the two Zhou family disciples. Floating in a place with a lot of exotic desolate spirit chi, Zhou Mo looked at Qin Feng, stretched out her hands, and waved in front of her. Rays of black light flashed from her fingertips, and the black light flickered. It formed a faint energy shield. And within the range of the energy shield, the exotic desolate spirit chi was not under Qin Feng's control and drilled into their bodies. This is Zhou Mo's method shocked even Zhou Xuanwu. Even Yiwu and Xiao and I could not do it, but his sister actually did it. In the distance, the others were shocked and envious, especially Yiwu and Xiao and I. They could not resist Qin Feng's strange method, but the Zhou family's Yuan spirit body could do it. As expected of the Yuan spirit body, in the end they could only blame it on her special body. Qin Feng opened his eyes and looked in Zhou Mo's direction, and his face showed some surprise. "Is it the power of the demon eye?" he softly said, and tried to use the devouring power to break down Zhou Mo's area, but it did not work. There was a special power there that prevented the devouring power from spreading. Immediately, he closed his eyes and ignored it, and crazily devoured the exotic desolate spirit chi that was constantly pouring into his body. And under his large-scale plundering, the amount of exotic desolate spirit chi also increased exponentially. Qin Feng could feel that his flesh and bones were like a hungry person pouncing on bread, constantly absorbing the exotic desolate spirit chi that was drilled into his body. His body was further refined, and his affinity with the energy of heaven and earth was also deeper. Qin Feng had a feeling that if he had enough time, he could even directly enter the ninth heaven realm in the heavenly secret pavilion. His hand became lighter, and the longevity flower was consumed. Qin Feng was about to ask, but the demon eye's voice suddenly sounded in his mind, causing his mind to go blank in an instant. Chapter 511. Recovery of consciousness. Qin Feng was stunned for more than 10 seconds before he regained his senses. He subconsciously injected his spiritual energy into the jade pendant. His spiritual body appeared in a white space. In front of him, there were 2 rays of light flickering, rich vitality surging. Sensing the weak fluctuations of life in the 2 rays of light, at this moment, even with his tenacious character, he could not help but feel a tingling sensation in his nose. His sister and Gong Xiaoxi had finally awakened. For this day, only he knew how much effort he had put in. "Sister," he gently called out. His tone was a little apprehensive, afraid that this scene was a dream. "Who's calling me? Is it Xiao Feng?" Not long after, A weak voice came from one of the rays of light. Hearing this familiar voice, Qin Feng's body trembled, and tears flickered in his eyes. How many days and nights had he dreamt of this scene? An illusory figure flashed out. Looking at her appearance, it was Qin Yao. Qin Yao also saw Qin Feng for the first time. Her face was filled with astonishment. Xiao Feng, what's going on? Qin Yao's consciousness was still a little hazy. She instinctively walked out and saw Qin Feng, which shocked her. Wasn't she dead? Why did she see her brother? Tears flowed down Qin Feng's face. He was on the verge of choking, unable to speak. His elder sister had lived her entire life for him. When they were young, she had always protected him. Only under her protection could he have a peaceful childhood. After he rose, he swore to protect his sister. For this, he cultivated with all his might. In the end, he killed the enemy who destroyed his sister's cultivation. When he thought that he had the qualifications to protect his sister, he met with a great disaster. Not long after they reunited, Qin Yao died because of him. That kind of pain could not be understood by those who had not experienced it. He almost went crazy. Even if he was lucky enough to survive, he had nothing to live for. Knowing that there was still a glimmer of hope for his sister, he pulled himself together. Everything he did was to revive his sister. He did not know how many times he had imagined this scene, and today, it finally came true. Little Feng. Qin Yao gradually regained her consciousness. She gently walked to Qin Feng and held him in her arms. She said softly, "Little Feng, you've worked hard." Although she didn't know why this happened, she knew that it was all thanks to Qin Feng that she was able to survive in this state. "You must have suffered a lot because of this." Greedily burying himself in Qin Yao's neck, Qin Feng sniffed and said, "As long as I can bring my sister back to life, anything is worth it." "Sister, don't worry. I've already completed the first step of resurrection. In the future, I'll definitely bring you all back to life." Qin Yao nodded gently with a gratified smile on her face. "Hey, Qin Feng, you really have a sister complex. People who don't know would think that you two are a couple." Suddenly, a teasing voice sounded. Even though that was the case, that voice was trembling. Qin Feng left Qin Yao's arms and wiped his tears. He looked at Gong Xiaoxi and said with a smile, "How does it feel to be resurrected?" "Very, very good." Gong Xiaoxi nodded. Her beautiful eyes were misty and could no longer hold back her tears. Qin Yao and Gong Xiaoxi regained consciousness, which meant that the first step of their resurrection was successful. In the future, as long as they could find rare and precious medicine, they could be completely resurrected. Qin Feng's heart was completely removed, and he felt relaxed all over. "By the way, little Feng, aren't we already dead? How did you do it? And where did your power come from that day?" Qin Yao asked. "My mother, it was this jade pendant." Qin Feng paused and said, "At that time, it was this jade pendant that gave me power. It was also it that saved your consciousness at the critical moment. That's why I was able to save you." Qin Feng naturally wouldn't tell them about the demon eye, so he could only say this. Since Qin Yao also knew about his mother, she shouldn't have any doubts. He didn't expect that his casual words were true. Qin Yao nodded gently. As Qin Feng expected, she didn't have any doubts because she knew that Qin Feng's mother's methods were miraculous. "Is this the jade pendant space?" Qin Yao looked around at the vast expanse of whiteness. "Yes." Qin Feng nodded and said, "We left the 100,000 barren mountains. Now we are in the Great Yan Empire. I participated in their internal competition and obtained the exotic desolate spiritual qi and the longevity flower. That's why you regained consciousness." "You left the 100,000 barren mountains?" Qin Yao and Gong Xiaoxi were both shocked. The latter asked, "How did you leave the 100,000 barren mountains?" Qin Feng told them about his experience of leaving the 100,000 barren mountains. Of course, he avoided the important parts and only said that luck played a large part. I really didn't expect you to really pass through the 100,000 barren mountains. After a long time, Gong Xiaoxi couldn't help but sigh. As a student of the Saint Ryuin sect, she had been strictly nurtured by the requirements of the path to heaven. Naturally, she knew the dangers of passing through the 100,000 barren mountains. In their hearts, the path to heaven was the only way to leave the primitive land. As for passing through the 100,000 barren mountains, it was simply a dead end. At that time, she insisted on following Qin Feng not because she thought there was hope, but because of her responsibility. No matter what, she had to try. Even if she died in the end, it was better than living a muddle-headed life in the primitive land with the empty name of a heavenly hall disciple. However, she didn't have any hope that Qin Feng would succeed. By the way, did you meet Little Yao, Tang Ran, and the others? Gong Xiaoxi suddenly asked after sighing with emotion for a while. Qin Feng shook his head and sighed. The outside world is too vast. I don't know where those people who came out with me are. Tang Ke and the others used the path to heaven, which is different from ours. I'm afraid that they are even further away from us. Is that so? Gong Xiaoxi heard this and looked disappointed. Don't worry, as long as they also go to the outside world, we will meet again one day. Qin Feng patted Gong Xiaoxi's shoulder. The three of them chatted for a while more before Qin Feng left the jade pendant space. The two of them had just recovered their consciousness and needed more time to recover their strength. He opened his eyes and laughed softly. His laughter grew louder and louder until he finally laughed loudly. Everyone looked at him in a daze. They didn't know what kind of stimulation this guy had received. After laughing for a while, Qin Feng stopped and looked at the people in the distance. Looking at them now, even Yu Lei, Mo Sun, and the others, he felt that they were much cuter. Then, he withdrew his devouring power and stopped oppressing them. His sister and Gong Xiaoxi had already been revived, so he didn't want to be too ruthless. If there is fortune, everyone should enjoy it together. I, Qin Feng, am not a person who eats alone, ha ha. After laughing loudly, Qin Feng closed his eyes and concentrated on absorbing the exotic desolate spiritual energy. Everyone looked at him in astonishment. However, after sensing that the powerful suction power had disappeared, they didn't care what kind of stimulation this guy had received. They all found a good place and started absorbing the exotic desolate spiritual energy. Chapter 512. The Third Floor Rumble. Unknowingly, a golden light suddenly blossomed in this area. Everyone immediately shot their gazes over. Immediately after, their gazes became sluggish. At the center of the explosion of golden light, a golden stone staircase appeared. There were a total of 9 steps, and on each step, golden light flickered. They were covered with mysterious and complicated patterns, and an extremely strong pressure spread out from them. What is that? Everyone looked at the golden stone staircase in shock. What is that? Someone exclaimed. Everyone hurriedly shot their gazes over. After the last step, there was a dark golden stone door. Golden light flickered, causing the surrounding space to become illusory and distorted. Even if they couldn't sense the energy ripples there, just from the distorted space, everyone could imagine how terrifying the energy pressure there was. This is the golden staircase to the 3rd floor. Huang Fu Yao's beautiful eyes stared at the golden staircase. After pondering for a moment, she suddenly exclaimed. Her voice instantly attracted everyone's gazes. Eldest Princess, what is the golden staircase to the heavens? Yiwu asked with a slightly solemn expression. Everyone looked at the eldest princess. She was the princess of the imperial family, so she should know more about the heavenly mystery pavilion than them. Huang Fu Yao stared at the golden staircase. After a moment of silence, she suddenly asked, Do you know how many floors there are in the heavenly mystery pavilion? Everyone was stunned. What did Huang Fu Yao mean? Didn't the heavenly mystery pavilion only have 2 floors? Only when the heavenly mystery divine tablet appeared would the upper and lower floors be defined as the heaven and earth floors. But no matter how it was defined, there were only 2 floors. From the appearance, the heavenly mystery pavilion should have 3 floors. Xiaoanai rubbed his chin. After pondering for a moment, he suddenly said, 3 floors. Hearing Xiaoni's words, everyone was shocked. After thinking carefully, they nodded inwardly. Just from the appearance, the heavenly mystery pavilion seemed to have 3 floors. However, the heavenly mystery pavilion only had 2 floors and the heaven and earth floors. So, no one had ever thought about the 3rd floor. You're saying that this golden staircase leads to the 3rd floor? Suddenly, Yi Wu exclaimed. Huang Fu Yao nodded and said, looking at the current situation, it should be. Everyone was in a daze. The 3rd floor, which had never appeared before, appeared in front of them. After being stunned for a moment, everyone's eyes burned with passion. Needless to say, this 3rd level that had never been revealed to the world definitely had a shocking treasure. Qin Feng's eyes burned with passion. It turned out that this heavenly mystery pavilion had a 3rd level that had never been opened to the public. Without question, the collection on the 3rd level was definitely much better than the first 2 levels. Suddenly, his body trembled slightly as he sensed the movements in his Qiankuan bag. 9 nether snake? Qin Feng was flabbergasted. Ever since the 9 nether snake had entered its evolution stage, it hadn't made any movements for a long time. Looks like the 3rd floor has the energy for this little snake to quickly evolve, Demon I said. Qin Feng nodded slightly. He could feel the intense desire coming from the depths of the 9 nether snake's consciousness. Originally, he had thought that his trip to the secret pavilion would come to an end. However, now that the 3rd floor had appeared, he had to give it a try no matter what. In an instant, everyone rushed forward. They wanted to climb the golden stairway to heaven and enter the mysterious 3rd floor. However, they had underestimated the golden stairway. There was a strong and terrifying pressure on it. Once they entered, they would feel as if they were carrying a heavy burden. Moreover, their spiritual energy would be sealed, and they wouldn't be able to use it. Most people could only persevere until the 5th stone step. People like Song Yuan and Yi Hua, who were slightly weaker than first-rate young experts, could only reach the 6th stone step. What a terrifying power! Zhuang Hu, Song Su, Li Hen, and the others stopped at the 7th stone step. They couldn't take another step forward. Their faces were filled with shock. This golden stairway was too difficult to climb. With their strength, they could only reach the 7th step. It seems that not everyone can enter the 3rd floor. Qin Feng's expression turned serious. At this moment, he was standing on the 8th step. Zhou Mo, Yi Wu, and Xiaoanai were also at this position. There's still one more floor. Xiaoanai gritted his teeth and stared at the stone door behind the 9th step. As long as he climbed one more step, he would be able to enter the 3rd floor. However, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't put his foot down. Poochie! In the end, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. His body swayed and he couldn't climb the 9th step. Is there really no other way? Yi Wu tried and found that it was too difficult to reach the top. There was only a glimmer of hope if she fought with her life on the line. However, she didn't dare to take such a gamble. No one knew what would happen if she suffered a serious injury here. It seems that even with the golden stairway to the 3rd floor, it will be difficult to pass the test and enter, Zhou Mo said. To be able to persevere until now was already the limit. It was too difficult to climb another step. Qin Feng nodded secretly. Indeed, it was too difficult. He felt his body tense up and a slight tingling pain came from his skin. It was as if his body was about to shatter. He even had an illusion that if he forcefully climbed the 9th stone step, his body would explode in an instant. He didn't want to experience the scene in front of the Tianji divine steel again. He also didn't dare to gamble because luck wouldn't be on his side every time. He wouldn't gamble with his life to obtain the conditions to enter the third floor. However, at this moment, he suddenly sensed that the pitch-black wooden chopstick suddenly moved. It vibrated slightly, and a thin layer of black light spread out. It wandered under his clothes and on the surface of his body. Suddenly, the terrifying pressure around him decreased a lot. This is... Qin Feng was surprised and then ecstatic. It seemed that the black chopsticks had a great effect on him. He almost forgot about it. How could something that was shaken off from the Tianji divine steel be an ordinary item? As the pressure lessened, Qin Feng directly ascended to the 9th step under the shocked gazes of the crowd. How did you do it? Xiao and I and Yiwu opened their mouths in shock and looked at Qin Feng in disbelief. They knew how terrifying the gold stairway was. It was impossible to climb it if one's physical body wasn't strong enough. No matter how many tricks Qin Feng had up his sleeves, his strength was still there. How could it be possible? Qin Feng smiled at them and ignored them. He pushed open the stone door and used his spiritual power to sense it. After confirming that there was no danger, he shyly went in. On the gold stairway, everyone was envious. There was definitely a great opportunity on the 3rd floor. Zhoumo's eyes flashed as she looked at Qin Feng, who went in. She gritted her teeth and a black mark flickered on her forehead. Then, the black light around her body became more intense. It flowed down like liquid and circulated around her body. Zhoumo's sudden change also attracted the attention of others. What is this girl trying to do? Xiao and I was surprised. Then, his expression slowly froze. The others also opened their mouths in shock. Chapter 513. Inner World. When Qin Feng entered the 3rd floor, he didn't even have time to think before his body suddenly sank. It was as if there was a powerful force dragging him down. What's going on? Qin Feng turned pale with fright. He had clearly entered the 3rd floor, so why did he feel as if he was falling? He couldn't stop this momentum, as if there was a terrifying force imprisoning him. This kind of sinking continued for several dozen breaths of time. Suddenly, Lin Qin Feng felt his body lighten, and the power that was controlling him disappeared. He opened his eyes, and he couldn't help but narrow his eyes when he saw a dazzling blue that was like crystal. After a long while, he finally adapted to the light. When he looked around, he couldn't help but be stunned. This was an ice cellar that was about 40 to 50 square meters. It was dazzling blue with specks of blue light dotting the ice cellar. It was like a galaxy giving off a very mysterious feeling. In the ice cellar, there was only a coffin covered with specks of blue light. Apart from that, there was nothing else. This strange place made Qin Feng even more cautious. He had clearly entered the 3rd floor, so how did he end up in this strange place? Could this be the 3rd floor of the divination pavilion? He controlled his body and slowly landed on the ice surface. As his eyes continued to scan, he quickly activated his spiritual perception to see if there was anything here that couldn't be seen with the naked eye. Soon, he was stunned. His perception was the same as his vision. In this strange ice cellar, there was nothing else besides the blue coffin in the center. Roar! Suddenly, a faint sound came from nowhere. Qin Feng's face changed and he quickly retreated to the ice surface. His soul power surged, and he suddenly raised his head. His eyes couldn't help but shrink. Above the blue coffin, on the ice surface, he could faintly see a magma-like scarlet light flowing. Within the scarlet light there was an enormous thing wiggling. Its lantern-sized inverted scarlet snake eyes were staring at him without blinking. Qin Feng's throat moved, and he steadied himself a little. He focused his gaze and quickly discovered that this enormous thing was actually an extremely large fire python. Its body was so large that he couldn't see the end of it. Qin Feng's scalp went numb. Just by looking at the size of this fire python, he knew that this was a python spirit that had lived for countless years. It was unknown how strong it was. Fortunately, it did not seem to be able to enter this place. Not long after, a pitch-black figure landed beside him. The black light gradually faded away, revealing its true form. Zhou Mo. Qin Feng was astonished. This girl was actually able to ascend to the 9th level, but when he thought of the demonic eye on her body, he understood. What is this? Zhou Mo was also shocked by the enormous fire python. She scanned her surroundings, and her face quickly froze. The 3rd level is like this? Qin Feng nodded slightly. The 3rd level was indeed a little unexpected. The good stuff should be in that coffin. You go and open it. I'll protect you, Qin Feng said. Zhou Mo nodded. He had only taken a few steps when he suddenly turned around. Qin Feng, you're too much. Seeing that his instigation had failed, Qin Feng smiled awkwardly and said, I tried just now, but I couldn't open it. Why don't you try? Zhou Mo widened his eyes and looked at him suspiciously. There's not much time left. We have to speed up. Qin Feng pointed at the fire python without a trace of embarrassment and said, This big guy will come in very soon. When that time comes, none of us will be able to leave. Who are you trying to fool? Zhou Mo curled her lips. This Qin Feng was clearly instigating her to take the risk. Everyone knew that in this strange place, that coffin was definitely not simple. No one dared to touch it lightly. The two of them were in a deadlock. Neither of them wanted to be the first to act. After a moment of silence, Qin Feng broke the silence and said, Neither of us can hide behind and eat alone. We'll open the coffin together and bear the consequences together. I wonder who came up with this idea. Zhou Mo curled her lips, then nodded and said, All right. Qin Feng slowly approached the ice coffin and extended his spiritual power, trying to peek inside. However, the ice coffin had a mysterious power that prevented his spiritual power from entering. The two of them stood at the two ends of the ice coffin. Qin Feng's expression was solemn. Since they had already come this far, he didn't want to return empty-handed. Old Mo, do you know what's inside? Qin Feng asked in his heart as his palm gently touched the coffin lid. Suddenly, he couldn't help but shiver. It's very mysterious. As for what it is, we'll only know after we open the coffin. The demon eye replied. Qin Feng nodded and looked at Zhou Mo. Then, he took a deep breath and pressed his hands on the coffin lid. Spiritual power surged. The two of them secretly increased their strength, but the coffin lid showed no signs of moving. What's going on? Qin Feng and Zhou Mo looked at each other in confusion. The coffin couldn't be opened? Old Mo, what's the situation? Qin Feng asked in his heart. There should be a special restriction that requires more power to open. You can't open it by yourselves. The demon eye paused and said, Tell that little girl to stop hiding. Using the power of the demon eye in her body, I should be able to use some of my power. Qin Feng heard this and nodded inwardly. Then, he looked at Zhou Mo and said, We need more power to open the coffin. You and I don't need to hide anymore. Use the power in your body. Zhou Mo was stunned. How did he know about the power in her body? However, time was of the essence and she didn't have time to ask. She quickly mobilized the power of the demon eye and 2 rays of black light spread out from her hands. At this moment, a ray of black light shot out from Qin Feng's palm and came into contact with the black light that spread out from Zhou Mo suddenly. The black light shone brightly and the entire coffin trembled slightly. At this moment, Zhou Mo's pretty face stiffened. She looked at Qin Feng in disbelief. You also have this power? Zhou Mo was extremely shocked. She was all too familiar with the fluctuations emanating from Qin Feng's body. It was exactly the same as the power in her body. Qin Feng ignored her and stared at the corner of the coffin. There, a crack was slowly expanding. Under the influence of the black light, the coffin lid was slowly being moved away. When it was a foot away, the coffin lid froze. At the same time, the black light returned to Qin Feng and Zhou Mo's bodies. Qin Feng, do you also have a mysterious power in your body? Zhou Mo asked anxiously. Qin Feng nodded slightly. Receiving his acknowledgement, Mo was shocked. No wonder she felt a special feeling when she saw him and couldn't help but want to get closer to him. It turned out that they both had the same attribute of power. Your power. Our focus shouldn't be on this right now. Qin Feng interrupted her and looked at the coffin that was a foot wide. The coffin didn't show the scene of dried bones as they had imagined. The interior was chaotic and dense with spiritual energy. Through the chaos, they seemed to be able to see the scene in the depth. This is... Both of them were stunned. This coffin seemed to contain an internal world. They could vaguely see stars swirling around it. It was as if there was a small world inside. How is it? Do we go in? Mo looked up at Qin Feng. After a moment of silence, Qin Feng gritted his teeth. The coffin was already open. They couldn't just take a look and go back. Chapter 514. Ancient Giant City. Qin Feng was absent-minded for a split second. At this moment, he felt as if he had traveled through an endless distance. When his vision cleared up, he was immediately shocked by the scene before him. This was an extremely ancient world. The entire world was dark red in color, and there were broken scenes everywhere. Faintly, there was a faint smell of blood. It was difficult to describe what era this was. He felt as if he was in the distant ancient era. The earth was dry, the mountain ridges were broken, and the lakes and seas were evaporated. The entire world could only be described with one word: ruin. There was nothing more appropriate than these two words. Wherever he looked, there was not a single place that was in good condition. Everywhere, everything was broken. In the distance, he could vaguely see jade palaces, but they were all broken. There were also extremely majestic buildings. Even from far away, he could see how huge they were. Even if they were broken, he could still feel the boundless pressure. The earth was dark red, as if it had been soaked in blood for a long time. As soon as he entered this place, an ancient aura of desolation assaulted his senses. It was as if he had returned to the distant desolation era. Qin Feng and Mo were both stunned by the scene before them. What kind of world was this? What kind of terrifying battle had taken place to actually destroy an entire world? Qin Feng, did we go to the wrong place? Mo pulled Qin Feng's arm. He was truly frightened by this scene. This world was too strange. There was no life force, as if it had died excessively. It was quiet and deathly still. There was not even the slightest sound. There were no insects on the ground and no birds in the sky. It was as if there was not a single living thing in this world. Deep in this place, one could feel an extremely oppressive feeling. It was as if this place was covered in dust. It was suffocating. Qin Feng swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He also did not understand where this place was. He had experienced many things, but he had never seen such a tragic scene before him. The sky was shattered and the earth was caved in. It was as if this was an abandoned world. This should be a small world sealed by the pavilion of heaven's secrets. The demon I said. Old devil, can you see where this is? Qin Feng asked in his mind. This should be the result of a terrifying battle in the ancient era, resulting in the destruction of this small world. After a pause, the demon eye continued, everything has been destroyed. From this you can see how terrifying the battle back then was. The pavilion of heaven's secrets should be a natural supreme treasure that participated in that battle. In the end, it sealed this small world. Natural supreme treasure? Qin Feng's heart skipped a beat. Natural treasures. Natural supreme treasures, as the name suggested. Natural supreme treasures. To heaven's secrets. This was especially true for extremely powerful primordial cardinal treasures. They could absorb the essence of the world, nurture their own spirituality, and take human form. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they were formidable cultivators who walked at the forefront of cultivation. He had never thought that the heavenly secret pavilion was actually a connate cardinal treasure. Qin Feng's eyes blazed. This was a natural supreme treasure. If he could obtain it. Don't even think about it. Even if it still has its own consciousness, you have no chance of obtaining it, let alone a dormant natural supreme treasure. The demon eye said, knowing what Qin Feng was thinking. Qin Feng curled his lips. He was just thinking about it and did not dare to take it seriously. With his strength, not to mention being able to activate a primordial treasure, even if he could, he was afraid that if it absorbed a little of his spiritual energy, his body would be instantly sucked dry. But the short black stick in your hand should be the key to the Pavilion of Heaven's secrets. Perhaps you'll have a great harvest this time. Qin Feng was stunned. Then, he was overjoyed. The Pavilion of Heaven's secrets still had treasures? And he still had the key to the treasure. Old devil, where is the treasure? He asked, his voice trembling. After a moment of silence, the demon eye replied, it should be in that huge city. Let's go. Hearing this, Qin Feng hurriedly pulled Zhou Mo and dashed over. The giant city did not seem far away, but with their speed, they still flew for more than an hour before they gradually approached it. So big. Zhou Mo's eyes widened in shock. They had flown for more than an hour to get close to the city, which showed how far it was. But even from such a distance, it looked so big. It was obvious how vast its body was. As the two of them continued to approach the huge city, the shock in their hearts continued to stack. Even Qin Feng was extremely shocked. This huge city was too vast. Even though they were at a high altitude, they still couldn't see the outline of this huge city clearly. The huge city was dilapidated. There were tall buildings in the city and huge spaceships and battleships that were thousands of feet long. But they were all damaged to varying degrees. Suddenly, the two lost their balance. A terrible turbulence appeared. Let's land quickly. Even if this place is dilapidated, it still has a terrible force. We can't explore it easily. We must treat it with reverence and respect, the demon eye said. Qin Feng hurriedly landed with Zhou Mo and walked toward the huge city. When the two arrived at the city gate, they looked up at the tall city wall. They were so shocked that they couldn't speak. Previously, they were at a high altitude, so they could barely see the city. They only felt that it was very big, but they didn't feel anything else. But when they got closer and looked at it from a close distance, they understood what it meant to be a dragon and an ant. The city wall was so high that it was difficult to see. It was as if it was towering above the clouds. Even flying couldn't reach such a height. Standing below the city wall, they deeply felt how small they were. It was as if they were ants looking up at a dragon. Moreover, there was an inexplicable pressure that made them involuntarily worship and respect it. It was as if there was really a huge monster looking down on them. This was only a dilapidated city, but it had such a terrible feeling. One could imagine just how majestic this huge city was in the past. It had an intimidating aura, but it was still beaten to a pulp. How do we go in? Qin Feng looked up at the endless city wall and asked in his heart. Even he couldn't fly to such a height. Or rather, his body couldn't withstand the environment at a higher altitude. Let's walk around nearby. There should be a way. Helpless, Qin Feng could only lead Zhou Mo to search the vicinity. After failing to find anything, the two of them could only climb up the city wall. Finally, several hundred meters in the air, they found a huge hole with a diameter of more than 300 meters. The two didn't hesitate and quickly went in. As soon as they entered, they were shocked by the scene in front of them even though they were mentally prepared. The city was dilapidated and desolate. On the ground, there were ravines and pits of more than 100 meters. There were even remnants of blood in some places, emitting a faint luster. Chapter 5:15. A terrifying past. There was no such thing as the worst, only worse. At this moment, Qin Feng and Zhou Mo deeply experienced it. This huge city was already empty, destroyed into a complete mess. Some places were charred black, as if they had been burned by fire. Some places were corroded beyond recognition. Large areas of palaces and tall buildings were only left with steel frames. There was also a majestic building. There was a huge metal spaceship that was thousands of feet long, nailed to it by a long spear that seemed to reach the sky. There were densely packed marks on it. Those were the marks left on it after the blood had been dried by the wind. This was a purgatory on Earth. The two of them were stunned. They had never seen such a scene of destruction before. They descended along the city wall. Here, out of respect, they did not dare to fly. According to the words of the demonic eye, there were always things in this world that needed to be respected. Fortunately, the two of them were not weak, and their spiritual energy was abundant. With a height of a few hundred meters and a point of leverage, it was not too difficult. What a deep pit! The two of them just happened to land in a deep pit. No, to be precise, it was a ravine that led straight to the depths of the city. This ravine was dozens of meters deep, and the width of the two sides were parallel. It was a few hundred meters wide, and it became shallower from the center to the two sides like a slope. They climbed up to the ground and carefully walked towards the center of the city. Everywhere they passed, everything they saw was ruined, without any signs of life. Sometimes they could even see bright bloodstains. There were black, purple, blue, silver, and all kinds of colors. This should be a world-ending catastrophe caused by a heavenly fissure in ancient times, the demonic eye suddenly said, with a low and complicated tone. Heavenly fissure? Despising the calamity? Qin Feng was startled and asked, "What is that?" "Creatures from beyond the heavens. Every time the heavenly fissure occurs, they will enter this world. That is a civilization that is completely different from this world. Once there is a collision, it will be destructive." The demonic eye sighed and said, "This should be caused by a heavenly fissure in ancient times." Qin Feng was shocked. This was the first time he had heard the demon eye say something like this. There was a world outside of this world? Don't ask anything. Right now, there's no benefit for you to know these things. If you can live to the end and walk to the peak of cultivation, you'll naturally understand that there are people outside of the heavens and earth outside of the heavens. What you've come into contact with right now is nothing more than a small situation within a small situation. However, being able to witness an apocalyptic catastrophe might not necessarily be a bad thing for you. For you to be able to enter, it might be the will of the heavens. In the future, you might be able to enter and participate in the game. Qin Feng was confused by Demon Eye's words, but he knew that he wasn't strong enough. He wouldn't be obsessed with things that were still far away from him. The two of them walked slowly in the huge city, heading towards the center of the city. When they passed by a place, they were suddenly attracted by a faint fragrance. This palace? The two of them looked at each other. There was some desire in their eyes. This fragrance caused the spiritual energy in their bodies to show signs of increasing. Without a doubt, the source of this fragrance was definitely something extraordinary. "We can go and take a look." Before Qin Feng had the time to ask, Demon Eye said. Nodding, Qin Feng and Zhou Mo carefully walked into the palace. When they stepped through the dark green palace door, there seemed to be light condensing in front of them. When they looked again, a simple and majestic palace appeared in their line of sight. The palace was paved with bluestones. Many stone pillars inscribed with strange patterns stood tall, as if supporting the entire palace. In the center of the palace there was a light wheel, emitting a faint light. In the light wheel, there was a large crystal-clear stream of water. It flowed like a stream, emitting waves of intoxicating light sounds. The water was sparkling and translucent, exuding a jade-like luster. Steam rose from it, overflowing with brilliance. It was extremely dazzling. An extremely pure and rich spiritual energy fluctuation spread out. Just taking a breath would make one's body feel comfortable, and one's pores would open up as if it was an extreme desire. 9 heavens, spiritual liquid. Qin Feng and Zhou Mo were dumbfounded. There was so much 9 heavens, spiritual liquid. In the outside world, a drop of it could be sold at a sky-high price. But here, it could be described as a river. This. Qin Feng's eyes lit up as he stared at the liquid in the light wheel. He could not help but lick his lips. Don't think too much. This has nothing to do with you. You can't enter the light wheel at all. Demon Eye's words extinguished half of the fire burning in Qin Feng's heart. Old demon, can't you do it? Qin Feng asked unwillingly. There was so much 9 heavens, spiritual liquid. If he just took a night and sold it, the income would be enough for him to not worry about cultivation resources for a few years. Don't be unwilling. It's useless even if you pull in all the top experts in the Great Yen Empire, Demon Eye said. Damn it! Qin Feng cursed in his heart. He suppressed Zhou Mo's eagerness and shifted his gaze elsewhere. His gaze swept across and immediately focused on the depths of the hall. There were 3 extremely thick stone pillars. At the top of the pillars, there were rays of light blooming. Within the light there were 3 items. A dagger, a battle armor, and a scroll. Acquired cardinal treasure, supreme grade battle armor, and supreme grade super power. Demon Eye said. Qin Feng was about to drool. Acquired cardinal treasures, second only to innate cardinal treasures, battle armor for supreme grade experts, and supreme grade superpower that even supreme grade experts would be envious of. Damn it, any one of them was an amazing opportunity, but all of them were too far away from him. Old demon, do you have a way? No. Is there no way at all? No. Damn it, then why did you agree to let me in? To broaden your horizons. Qin Feng was speechless. What else could he say? Kid, even if this place is dilapidated, it still contains its own force. If you're not strong enough, you won't be able to touch it at all. Demon Eye paused, then said, Do you see those supreme grade experts? Qin Feng's gaze shifted and immediately shrank. He said in shock, Those stone statues are people? In the depths of the hall, there were layers of stone stairs. The stone stairs led up, and on both sides of the stairs there were many seats. On the seats, there were many figures standing on the left side. These figures were completely black, as if they had been petrified. Qin Feng's scalp went numb, and there was an uncontrollable surge of fear in his heart. Don't worry, they're just inanimate objects. They were only preserved because their bodies were dried by the evil aura in an instant, Demon Eye said. However, they should have been supreme-grade experts when they were alive. Qin Feng's heart shrank. A large group of supreme-grade experts had all died in an instant. The person who did this. He didn't dare to imagine what kind of terrifying battle had taken place here in the past. Chapter 5:16. Mysterious 9 Nether Snake. If these treasures were placed in the outside world, any one of them would probably cause countless experts to go crazy over them. They were right in front of Qin Feng, but he couldn't obtain any of them. That kind of depression was hard to understand unless one experienced it personally. However, Qin Feng also knew that no matter how unwilling he was, the treasures here had nothing to do with him, unless it had something to do with the black chopsticks in his hand. This was also an extra reward from the Divine Mystery Pavilion for getting a perfect score. Qin Feng pulled the wide-eyed Zhou Mo out of the giant hall and walked towards the center. After walking for a short distance, his footsteps suddenly stopped and his expression changed. This was because he felt a strange movement from the 9 Nether Snake in his Qiankuan bag. It was a very yearning cry. Through his connection with the 9 Nether Snake, Qin Feng quickly sensed the direction of the 9 Nether Snake's yearning. After pausing for a moment, he quickly ran in that direction. 10 minutes later, they came to an open area. To be more specific, it was a huge pit. In the middle of the pit there was an incomparably huge skeleton. This is a dragon? Qin Feng was shocked. This skeleton was 20 to 30,000 feet long. Although many of the bones were damaged, it wasn't difficult to see its body when it was alive. This body was very similar to the divine dragons in the record. It's not a dragon, it's a mysterious nine-nether snake. The demon, I said. Qin Feng was stunned. Only then did he understand. No wonder the nine-nether snake could sense this place. It was its ancestor. A pure-blooded nine-nether snake would definitely evolve into a mysterious nine-nether snake in the end. Qin Feng and Zhou Mo slowly slid into the deep pit. Immediately they felt an extremely strong sense of oppression, filled with a thick and bitter aura. The closer they got, the stronger the pressure. In the end, they realized that there was a faint, almost invisible layer of energy around the mysterious nine-nether snake. This, Qin Feng's heart was greatly shaken. Even though he was outside the energy barrier, he could still sense the devouring heaven aura sweeping out from within, causing the surrounding space to become distorted. That kind of frightening pressure directly filled the entire energy barrier in layers. Outside, Qin Feng and Zhou Mo were also under tremendous pressure. Their bodies tensed up, and spiritual power circulated on the surface of their skin, barely resisting the pressure. They could only approach about 300 meters, unable to advance any further. If you throw the nine-netherworld snake into it, it can speed up its evolution and even achieve a super-evolution. The demon, I said. Will it work? Qin Feng asked. He was already unable to withstand the pressure from 300 meters away. If he threw the nine-nether snake into the energy barrier, it would probably explode before it even got close. The pure nine-underworld snake is the direct descendant of the nine-underworld black snake. Other people can't get close, but the nine-underworld snake can. Hearing this, Qin Feng no longer hesitated. He took out the coiled nine-underworld snake, wrapped its body with spiritual power, and threw it out with force. Sure enough, the nine-underworld snake's body entered the energy barrier without any hindrance, and finally landed on the skull of the nine-underworld black snake. After doing all this, Qin Feng looked around, wanting to get some opportunities. Maybe there were some treasures that he missed. Old Mo, what was the strength of this nine-underworld black snake when it was alive? Qin Feng asked as his gaze constantly scanned the huge skeleton. The nine-underworld black snake, at the very least, should surpass the Supreme Being level? The demon eye's words made Qin Feng's heart skip a beat. Surpassing the Supreme Being level? What kind of heaven-defying strength was that? In his knowledge, the ninth heaven realm was a super-expert. As for the Supreme Being level above the ninth heaven, that was a supreme existence. What was above the Supreme Being level? This was beyond his knowledge. But without a doubt, that kind of life form was definitely a dominator-level existence. Qin Feng's moving gaze suddenly paused. Then, his body froze, and there was a look of horror in the depths of his eyes. This was because he seemed to have sensed a faintly discernible life force fluctuation from the skeleton in that instant. Could it be that the nine-underworld black snake is not completely dead? Qin Feng's heart trembled. He wasn't sure if what he felt was real or if he was in a trance. Qin Feng frowned. His 5 fingers clenched and then slowly loosened. After a few cycles, his stiff skin recovered. Then, he turned and walked to another direction, which happened to be facing the skull. It was also at this moment that Qin Feng's face changed dramatically again. He couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air, because he saw that there was a dark bloody hole in the nine-underworld black snake's skull. To be precise, it wasn't a bloody hole. Instead, there was a circle of red light around the hole, as if blood was squirming. The bloody hole was about the size of a fist. Compared to the nine-underworld black snake's body, it was inconspicuous. But Qin Feng knew that it should be a fatal wound. Qin Feng's gaze moved and finally stopped below the nine-underworld black snake's skull. There was a long red sword which was coming straight at him. Obviously, in the ancient war, someone threw a long spear from above and pierced through the nine-underworld black snake's skull, nailing it to death here. It was difficult for Qin Feng to say how strong a mysterious nine-nether snake that had surpassed the sovereign level was. However, he knew that there were only a handful of experts of this level in this world. But a powerhouse of this level could be nailed to death with a single spear. It was obvious how terrifying the catastrophe was. Qin Feng's skin was a little cold. Then, he looked at the long red-black spear. Spiritual light gathered in his eyes, and after a glance, it froze in one spot. Qin Feng's hair seemed to stand on end at this moment. An indescribable fear welled up in his heart. Suddenly, a layer of reddish-black halo appeared on the long spear and quickly spread out. Qin Feng's pupils shrank. Even if he couldn't feel the energy fluctuations on the halo, he knew that it was a devastating disaster for him. This was a murderous aura that could kill a powerhouse beyond the Supreme Being level. Just a strand of it would be enough to kill him. But at this moment, a light curtain fell from the huge skeleton. The spreading halo hit the light curtain and immediately dissipated. Seeing this scene, Qin Feng breathed a sigh of relief. Only then did he realize that his back was soaked in sweat. The 9 underworld black snakes' evolution should take some time. Let's go find the treasure first. The demon eye said, the evil aura here is too strong. We can't stay here for too long. Who knows what accidents will happen? The demon eye's casual words made Qin Feng's face turn cold. He didn't say anything and quickly left with Zhou Emo, running towards the center of the city. Soon, a huge square appeared in their line of sight. This place was in ruins and rocks were scattered everywhere. However, the center was very clean. In the center, there was an altar. In the 4 directions of the altar, there were 4 stone pillars that looked like stone dragons. They were ferocious and made people involuntarily feel awe. We should be able to use the key to get up. Qin Feng nodded slightly and took out the black chopstick-like key. A thin layer of light bloomed, enveloping him and Zhou Emo looking at the altar not far away. Qin Feng gritted his teeth and quickly climbed up. Chapter 5:17. A bountiful harvest. As soon as they entered the altar, an ancient and desolate aura hit them in the face. It made them feel as if they had traveled through endless time and space and arrived at an unfathomable ancient era. Under this ancient aura, Qin Feng felt a sense of respect from the bottom of his heart. He didn't know where this respect came from, but it was uncontrollable. It was as if it was natural. The respect in his heart controlled Qin Feng's body. He made a saluting gesture, and then looked at the altar with deep respect. Zhou Emo also followed Qin Feng and saluted. The altar was so ancient that it could not be described with words. Every single imprint on its body was so profound that it seemed to have transcended time and space, and had existed for all eternity. Moreover, the altar didn't look big from the outside, but after entering, it seemed to have shrunk countless times. It was as if there was a world sealed on the altar that couldn't be seen from the outside. They were only a few dozen feet away from the altar, but they couldn't see the end of it at all. It was like an ancient continent. Moreover, the altar was shrouded in mist, causing it to be in a hazy state, making it seem somewhat illusory. Qin Feng looked at the altar in shock. It was made of stones of unknown age under his feet. There were mysterious patterns on them, as if they were carved by man, but also as if they were formed naturally. It gave people a very strange feeling. The black chopsticks in his hand vibrated, leading Qin Feng to a place. Soon, a door appeared in front of them. It was a door of light, flickering with mysterious light. There was a black hole on the door of light, and it was about the same size as the black chopstick. Qin Feng knew what to do without the demon eye's instructions. He walked over and inserted the black chopsticks halfway into the hole. Buzz buzz. The door of light vibrated, and a mechanical sound was heard. Then, the light shone brightly, and Qin Feng and Zhou Emo were sucked in. Their vision was dazzled for a moment, and they recovered. What entered their eyes was a magnificent pavilion with richly ornamented beams and painted rafters. Qin Feng didn't have time to look around. His gaze was instantly attracted by the 8 balls of light in front of him. "Old devil, Can I take whatever I want from these 8 balls of light? Qin Feng quickly asked in his mind. Yes, this is the right granted to you by the key. After receiving the demon eye's confirmation, Qin Feng didn't stop. He quickly rushed toward the 8 balls of light. In the end, he kindly reminded Zhou Emo, these are additional treasures of the divination pavilion. Whether or not you can obtain them will depend on your own strength. Zhou Emo stared blankly at Qin Feng, who was shouting anxiously. After a few breaths, he came back to his senses and immediately shouted, Qin Feng, you're such a jerk. In an instant, a black light erupted from her body, flowing through her body like liquid. Zhou Emo transformed into a black light and rushed out. Qin Feng arrived in front of a ball of light. His spirit energy surged as he reached out with his hand and grabbed it. Buzz! However, the ball of light shook violently and broke free. This shocked him. An ownerless object actually had such powerful strength. Then, the demon eye's next sentence made him so angry that he almost vomited blood. Pay attention. Each object can only be used once. If you don't succeed, it will disappear. Qin Feng stared blankly at the ball of light that slowly dissipated after breaking free from his hand. His heart was bleeding. Ah, Qin Feng, I caught 2. Suddenly, Zhou Mo's surprised cry sounded. Qin Feng's expression changed drastically. He hurriedly shouted at her, use your strongest power. Don't let them run away. Qin Feng was stunned. He stared blankly at Zhou Mo's 2 black tentacles. His expression couldn't be more interesting. Aya, they ran away. Zhou Mo muttered angrily. Just as he was about to continue, his gaze froze. How did they disappear? The 2 balls of light in front of her slowly dissipated. She stared blankly at Qin Feng. Qin Feng's face twitched violently. He roared, you prodigal woman, these things only have one chance. If you can't get them, they will disappear. Qin Feng's heart was bleeding. It was fine if you snatched one, but how could you be so greedy? You caught 2 at once. There were only 8 in total, and 3 disappeared at once. How could he not be depressed? How could this be? Zhou Mo stared blankly. Then, a bright black light burst out. Black light surged around her body. Black tentacles stretched out and condensed into 2 big black hands in midair. She directly grabbed the 2 balls of light not far away. Damn it! Seeing this, Qin Feng's heart skipped a beat. This damned girl was too greedy. He didn't dare to fall behind. He directly activated the Dao Yen mode, then the primitive war body, and his strongest state. Chaotic light spots filled his body. He stretched out his big hands and grabbed a ball of light in each hand. Buzz! Each ball of light had an extremely strong rebound force. Qin Feng's body trembled violently. Even with the protection of the primitive war body, blood dripped from his hands. He gritted his teeth, circulated his spiritual power, and desperately suppressed the 2 balls of light. Under his desperate efforts, the power of the 2 balls of light finally gradually decreased. With a flash of light, 2 objects appeared in his hands. One of them was a pitch-black battle armor that was covered in mysterious and obscure patterns. A heart-palpitating energy wave slowly spread out from it. Heavenly armor. Not bad, the demon eye commented. Qin Feng's eyes lit up. He asked, what level is this heavenly armor? Judging from its fluctuations, it should be low level, the demon eye said. Hearing this, Qin Feng's eyes darkened. Heavenly armor was a defensive magic treasure. A low-level heavenly armor could withstand the full force attack of a 3rd heaven realm powerhouse who had ascended to the 3rd level. Kid, don't be dissatisfied. You've only opened the 1st level of the treasure. It's already good to have such a harvest, the demon eye said. Qin Feng pursed his lips and then looked at the other one. It was a treasure sword that was completely blue. It flickered like lightning. At the same time, it gave off waves of numbness when he held it in his hand. Thunder suppression sword. A thought passed into Qin Feng's mind, causing him to exclaim, This is a heaven artifact. Yes, it's a heaven artifact that can kill a ninth heaven realm powerhouse, the demon eye nodded and said. Looking at the armor and thunder suppression sword in his hand, Qin Feng was overjoyed. This was a real benefit. He really didn't know what kind of treasures the other 3 balls of light contained. With that thought, he looked at Zhou Mo. He saw that she was holding a green dagger in one hand and a sheepskin scroll in the other. Hey! Zhou Mo, what did you get? Qin Feng walked over with a smile on his face. However, his gaze seemed to be fixed on Zhou Mo's hands. Seeing him like this, Zhou Mo hurriedly put away the 2 treasures and stared at him warily. Qin Feng, don't think about getting anything from me. Be careful or I'll fight you to the death. The corner of Qin Feng's mouth twitched. Was it necessary to guard against him as if he was a thief? I also got something. Naturally, I won't steal your things. Qin Feng squeezed out a kind smile on his face. After a pause, he glanced at Zhou Mo and said, Your sheepskin scroll should record a very high-level spell, right? Chapter 518. Peak of half-step. Qin Feng stared at Zhou Mo with a brilliant smile. If he wasn't wrong, Zhou Mo's cyan dagger was also a heaven artifact. As for the sheepskin scroll, if it wasn't a record of cultivation experience, it was a high-level technique, or it was a treasure map. No matter which one it was, they weren't one-time consumables. Even if he let Zhou Mo take a look, he wouldn't lose anything. Looking at the smile on Qin Feng's face, Zhou Mo curled her lips and said, We'll each get 2. Don't covet the others. Don't worry, even if you talk until your mouth breaks, I won't let you take a look. You. Qin Feng stared at Zhou Mo and said angrily, Don't forget, I was the one who brought you here. You should thank me for getting these things. I entered the 3rd floor with my own strength. What does it have to do with you? Zhou Mo snorted. If I didn't have the key, do you think you could enter here? Qin Feng said, That black stick is the key to opening this light door. You saw it just now. As for the origin of the black stick, I think you can guess it. I got it from the mysterious heaven's divine steel when I got full mark. So, everything here belongs to me. I don't care. Everyone has a share. What's in my hands is mine. Don't even think about taking it. Zhou Mo raised her snow-white chin and cast a sidelong glance at Qin Feng. After pausing for a while, her black eyes rolled and she suddenly said, It's not that I can't show you, but you have to pay a price. What do you want? Qin Feng asked. Zhou Mo stared at the black armor in his hand, her big black eyes flashing. She licked her red lips and said, There is indeed a technique recorded on this sheepskin scroll that can kill 9th-layer heaven cultivators. I can let you cultivate this technique, but you have to give me that armor. Qin Feng was infuriated when he heard this. Zhou Mo, how can you do business like this? Even if I learn that spell, you can continue to learn it. But if I give you my armor, I won't have it anymore. In the end, you didn't lose anything. Instead, you took one of my armors. Is this how you do things? Zhou Mo smiled embarrassedly and said, I'm just kidding. I don't want your armor. Just take off the iron sheet on your chest and give it to me. Iron sheet? The corner of Qin Feng's mouth twitched. That was made of a rare metal, and not even a 3rd heaven realm expert could break it with a single strike. In her eyes, it was just a sheet of metal. You make it sound so easy. Qin Feng stared at Zhou Mo and said, I don't want your technique, but this last item is mine. You can't take it. Why should we? Everyone who sees it should have a share. We should split everything here equally. Zhou Mo placed her hands on her waist and said unreasonably. Qin Feng gritted his teeth in anger. You let 2 of them escape. What's wrong with me taking the last one? Don't forget, I was the one who opened this treasury. In any case, I want to split it. If you don't agree, we'll use force. Zhou Mo said. Seeing her ruffian look, Qin Feng was so angry that his liver hurt. Other than Hua Xiaoyao, he had never seen such a greedy woman. you win. We'll split it equally. Qin Feng gritted his teeth and said. It wasn't that he didn't want to use force, but Zhou Emo had the demonic eye. She had limitless potential. Who knew how far she could use the power of the demonic eye? Even if he could defeat her, he probably wouldn't have the energy to suppress the last ball of light. The two of them attacked at the same time. Large hands of spiritual energy reached out and suppressed the last ball of light. Soon, the light disappeared and a ball of crystal-clear liquid appeared. 9 heavens, spiritual liquid. Their eyes burned. This wasn't just 1 or 2 drop. This was a ball of 9 heavens, spiritual liquid. If they really wanted to separate them, there would be at least 70 to 80 drops. Almost at the same time, spiritual energy erupted from their palms. Qin Feng activated the 100 Calamity Heaven-devouring art and began to devour the liquid. The ball of 9 heavens spiritual liquid was divided into 2 by the 2 of them. Each of them had half of the liquid. However, Zhou Mo's spiritual energy was great. The 9 heavens spiritual liquid in her hands suddenly trembled. Drops of crystal-clear liquid quickly entered Qin Feng's body. Bastard! Upon seeing this, Zhou Emo cursed. A black light suddenly shot out from her spiritual energy hand. The black light opened its mouth and directly bit off a small part of Qin Feng's half of the 9 heavens spiritual liquid. Then, it quickly shot back and entered Zhou Mo's body. Qin Feng's face turned green. That bite had at least 5 to 6 drops of 9 heavens spiritual liquid. The amount that he had devoured was only that much. The two of them kept the remaining 9 heavens spiritual liquid and then glared at each other. Neither of them made a move. After a stalemate for a while, the two of them sat cross-legged at the same time and formed hand seals to enter a cultivation state. One of them devoured the 9 heavens spiritual liquid while the other devoured it. Both of them had to refine it. As the two of them entered a cultivation state, the spiritual energy around them suddenly fluctuated and began to increase crazily. Consuming 5 to 6 drops of 9 heavens spiritual liquid at once was an astonishing amount. At least in the Great Yen Empire and its surrounding areas, no one had such a heavenly gift. A drop of 9 heavens spiritual liquid could be sold for a high price on the market. It was enough to cause people to go crazy over it. As for consuming it, one had to be extremely careful and make sufficient preparations. No matter how strong one's foundation was, they couldn't afford to consume so much at once. Qin Feng's spiritual energy was like boiling water. It kept rolling and rippling, causing the void to tremble. There were a total of 7 drops of 9 heavens spiritual liquid in his body. The energy contained within them was almost enough to make his body explode. When he looked inside himself, he could see a violent energy flowing through his body. Everywhere it passed, his meridians, flesh, and blood would start to spasm. Thousands of rays of light spewed out from his pores. The energy was too rich. Even if he used the devouring power to absorb it, his flesh and blood couldn't absorb it. Boom! With a muffled sound in his body, he broke through to the half-step 9th heaven realm. His strength increased by a large margin. And it didn't stop there. His spiritual energy was still growing, pushing toward the true 9th heaven realm. In the end, his strength stagnated at the peak of the half-step 9th heaven realm. He was only one opportunity away from the 9th heaven realm. Qin Feng was desperately absorbing the remaining energy. Of course, it wasn't used to increase his strength, but to nourish his flesh, meridians, bones, and so on. At most, half of the energy could be used to increase his strength. He could only absorb the rest for his body. As for wasting it, he couldn't do anything about it. After all, there were 7 drops of 9 heavens spiritual liquid. Even if he had just entered the 9th heaven realm, it was impossible to absorb all of it at once. Feeling the spiritual energy in his body increase several times, Qin Feng smiled with relief. His physical body and spiritual energy had both improved greatly, causing his strength to soar. Now, he was confident that he could challenge a ninth heaven realm powerhouse. He could even kill one who had just entered this realm. He looked at Zhou Emo, who had also finished absorbing. When he saw Qin Feng, he grinned. Half-step peak. You've improved a lot. Zhou Emo laughed. You're not bad either. Qin Feng muttered. Zhou Emo had also reached this realm, which made him a little surprised. Carefully calculating, Zhou Emo seemed to be a little younger than him. Chapter 519. Divine Steel Suppressing Evil Spirits. Qin Feng was shocked when he heard the demon eye's words. He quickly asked, "There are still living creatures in this world?" He was shocked. This place had been ruined for who knows how many years. How could there still be living creatures? It's hard to say. Maybe there really is an old monster hibernating here. Let's leave quickly. The demon eye said. Qin Feng nodded and no longer hesitated. He quickly left with Zhou Emo. The two returned to the place where the 9 nether snake evolved. However, the evolution was not complete yet, so Qin Feng could only continue to wait here. Half an hour passed, but there were no changes to the 9 nether snake. This made Qin Feng anxious. The longer he stayed here, the more uneasy he felt. He had a feeling that something bad was going to happen. Old devil, can you get the 9 nether snake out? Qin Feng asked. He didn't dare to wait any longer. The uneasiness in his heart grew. He wanted to take the 9 nether snake and run. There's no other way. We can only let it accept the mysterious 9 nether snake's inheritance and help it achieve super evolution. The demon eye shook his head and paused for a moment before continuing, or the mysterious 9 nether snake can use other methods to send it out without interrupting the inheritance. The mysterious 9 nether snake still hasn't died? Qin Feng was shocked. It's considered dead. There's only a remnant of its will that refuses to disperse. Perhaps it's waiting for this moment. Otherwise, how could you have come here? The demon eye said. Qin Feng sighed. He hoped that nothing bad would happen for the 9 nether snake to achieve super evolution. Right, old devil, what level will the 9 nether snake be after super evolution? It'll be at least 6th stage if it accepts the mysterious 9 nether snake's inheritance. Moreover, its upper limit has increased. Its future is limitless. Qin Feng's heart heated up. It would be a 6th stage archaic descendant after evolution. This meant that he had a 9th stage heaven realm powerhouse as his bodyguard. Moreover, it would be an even stronger powerhouse. Without a doubt, a 6th stage archaic descendant was much stronger than a normal 6th stage spirit beast. You must successfully evolve. Qin Feng prayed in his heart. Then, he sat down quietly and waited for the 9 nether snake to complete its evolution. The quiet time passed quickly. At some unknown time, Qin Feng suddenly opened his eyes and stared blankly ahead. He didn't know why, but his heart was surging with emotions and he couldn't hide his palpitations. It was as if something terrifying was approaching. Let's go, the evil spirit remnant consciousness has awakened. At this moment, the demon eye's anxious voice suddenly sounded. Run. Qin Feng quickly pulled Zhou Emo and ran upwards. However, after running a few steps, the entire crater was filled with a strange energy. One could notice that the space within this enormous pit was in a warped state while ripples undulated and filled every single corner. Qin Feng and Jian Wushuang instantly felt as if they'd fallen into a swamp, and it was difficult for them to move. Qin Feng suddenly turned his head and his pupils fiercely shrank. He saw that under the mysterious 9 nether snake's skull, there was a surge of scarlet-black qi, as if a sinister face had appeared. An extremely terrifying feeling made Qin Feng's body freeze. Looking at the strange face that was emitting scarlet-black qi, Qin Feng's heart trembled and he shuddered. The scarlet-black qi continued to spread in this direction. Wherever it passed, even the space was dyed with this color. It's over. Qin Feng and Zhou Mo's faces were deathly pale. This power had already exceeded their understanding. This damned evil spirit, it's really not dead yet. It's already like this, yet it can still come out and cause trouble. Girl, you still have one more chance to drink wine with your son, but not now. Sigh. This time, I can only let this old man fight with my life on the line. I just don't know how long it'll sleep for. Qin Feng's body tensed up. His skin felt as if it was being pierced by barbs, and even his mind began to become absent-minded. In the center of his palm, black light filled the air, and an extremely imposing power slowly seeped in. However, just as that power was about to come out, it suddenly subsided. Then, the scarlet-black chi suddenly expanded, and the skeleton of the mysterious netherworld snake that was thousands of feet long shattered with a loud bang. Poochie! The shock wave spread out, and Qin Feng suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Under the influence of the scarlet-black chi, his eyelids became heavier and heavier. Could it be the power to stop? How can I accept this? His eyelids drooped, and his vision was full of boundless scarlet-black chi. While his consciousness was in a state of chaos, Qin Feng seemed to be able to see this picture scroll in his days. It was an ancient world with majestic terrain and endless streams of water. It was filled with rich vitality. Suddenly, a crack appeared in the sky, and the evil spirit that was suffused with scarlet-black chi attacked. Then, a fierce battle broke out. Roar! An indescribably huge dragon appeared out of nowhere and faced the evil spirit head-on, and a fierce battle broke out. That battle caused the sky to collapse and the earth to split. The sun and moon lost their color. It was indescribably tragic. The entire world was destroyed, and too many creatures died. Mountains of corpses were everywhere, and blood flowed like rivers. The mountain peaks and giant trees were dyed red. The seawater was evaporated, and the ground was broken. The entire world was dyed red. Clang! An incomparably black claw stretched out from the darkness, carrying a terrifying aura. It directly tore the sky apart, and a shocking scene occurred. The huge dragon faced the dark claw, and the two collided, erupting with dazzling divine light. Energy gushed out, space collapsed, and runes of the great Tao interweave. This place was completely boiling. In the end, the scene became more and more blurry. There was no result to that battle. When everything became clear, there was only a huge blood-stained divine steel that fell to the ground. That divine steel was very similar to the Tianji divine steel, but it was countless times larger. In the end, the scene disappeared. The moment it disappeared, Qin Feng instantly woke up and looked in front of him in disbelief. The crimson-black gas was invaded, and there seemed to be a figure floating inside. He waved his sleeve, and the entire giant city trembled. Then, a divine steel flew over from afar and suppressed the crimson-black gas. This is the Tianji divine steel? Qin Feng's pupils contracted. With the suppression of the Tianji divine steel, the crimson-black gas gradually disappeared. Only a divine steel suppressed the long spear and pushed it into the ground. The crimson-black gas faded and the light condensed. A transparent old man's figure slowly appeared. "Thank you, Senior." Qin Feng and Zhou Yimou hurriedly cupped their fists respectfully. Without a doubt, it was this old senior who had saved them. The old man smiled and stretched out his hand. In his palm, the 9 underworld snake was coiled up. The old man's gaze was gentle as he whispered, "The 9 underworld black snake lineage is not extinct after all." A gentle light bloomed in his palm, and then slowly withdrew into the 9 underworld snake's body. After doing all this, his originally transparent body became even more illusory. Specks of light were emitted from his body. That was a sign that he was about to dissipate. The old man was calm. He flicked his finger, and 2 streams of light shot out. One was the 9 underworld snake, and the other directly entered Qin Feng's forehead. "Thank you, Senior." Qin Feng cupped his hands and bowed. The old man smiled. Finally, his body collapsed and turned into specks of light that filled the sky. Chapter 520. Suppressing the three strong. On the second floor of the Heavenly Secret Pavilion, Dance, Xiao and I, Huang Fu Yao and the others were all staring at the golden stairway to heaven. Under their gazes, the golden stairway to heaven gradually dimmed. Oh no, the Heavenly Secret Pavilion is going to hibernate again, Huang Fu Yao exclaimed. Qin Feng and Zhou Mo haven't come out yet. Zhou Xuanwu's face was filled with anxiety. If they couldn't return before the Heavenly Secret Pavilion hibernated, they would be completely trapped inside. We must think of a way to save them. Song Yuan and Song Su also revealed a worried expression. How? They insisted on entering the third floor. They can't blame others. If they die, they die. They can only blame themselves for not being strong enough. A strange sneer rang out. Naturally, there were some people who were happy to see Qin Feng in danger. They couldn't wait for Qin Feng to die inside. Yulei, what do you mean? Zhou Xuanwu glared at Yulei, Mo Sun and the others. What? Did we say something wrong? They went to snatch the opportunity and left us behind. Now that they're in danger, do we have to risk our lives to save them? Mo Sun sneered with ridicule. Enough, all of you stop quarreling. Dance looked at the dimming golden stairway to heaven and said in a deep voice, even if we want to save them, we can't reach the third floor. Whether they can return in time will depend on their own luck. Under everyone's gazes, the golden stairway to heaven dimmed even more. However, just as it was about to completely disappear, two figures suddenly appeared and were thrown out in a sorry state. They're out, but this situation, someone said with a puzzled expression. The two of them went to the third floor to obtain an opportunity. No matter how they looked at it, they were thrown out. The group of people quickly surrounded them. They discovered that the two of them were only in a sorry state and did not suffer any injuries. What's on the third floor? Why were you there for so long? Dance asked. The others stared unblinkingly at Qin Feng and Jian Wushuang. They all wanted to know what this never-before-opened third floor of the secret pavilion contained. It's nothing. It's about the same as this level, but the scope is much larger, Qin Feng vaguely replied. He had discussed this matter with Zhou Mo. This matter had a great background. If news of it got out, not only would the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets be targeted, they would also be targeted. Therefore, they all agreed to keep this matter a secret. Hearing Qin Feng spouting a lot of saliva but not getting any useful information, the group of people looked disappointed. That's not right. How can there be no fortuitous opportunities at all on the third level? I think you guys want to take it all for yourselves. Yulei stared at Qin Feng and Zhou Mo with a sneer on his face. Since we entered this place together, we should share the benefits equally. That's right. This opportunity belongs to the Pavilion of Heavenly Secret. Since we came in together, how can you take it all for yourselves? Many people echoed. Why don't we ask for everyone's opinion? Someone encouraged. I think so too. The items of the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets should be shared equally. Clearly, many people were very interested in what Qin Feng and Zhou Mo had obtained on the third floor. Even Huang Fu Yao, Xiao and I, and the others narrowed their eyes. Yiwu looked at Qin Feng with a slight frown. Her mouth twitched as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she didn't say anything. Why? Entering the third floor is our own strength. Who can you blame for not being able to enter? Zhou Mo's small face flashed with anger as he said. Rare treasures of heaven and earth belong to those who are capable. Don't blame others for not being able to enter. Miss Zhou, are you saying that whether or not we can protect the treasures in our hands depends on our own strength? Mo Sun chuckled softly. Zhou Mo's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? It's not that I mean anything, but that's what we all mean. Mo Sun pointed at the people around him and said, everyone has the same idea. The items of the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets should be shared equally, or it should be obtained based on strength. Whoever is capable can take this opportunity out. Following Mo Sun's words, the group of people moved without leaving a trace, faintly surrounding Qin Feng and Zhou Emo in the middle. Although they couldn't use force here, most people were interested in what Qin Feng and the others had obtained on the third floor. This was no longer limited to those who were only targeting Qin Feng. Under the general trend, no one cared about those rules. In addition, Huang Fuyao, Yi Wu, and Xiao and I didn't say anything, so they were even more daring. Everyone's meaning is that those who are capable should get it, and we're going to snatch it by force? Qin Feng smiled faintly. Looking at Yi Wu and Xiao and I, he said, "Are you also thinking the same? I don't care if you share it." Xiao and I shrugged. His response was very vague. Huang Fuyao and Yi Wu didn't say anything. The attitude of the three of them was equivalent to telling those people that they couldn't care less about what they did here. It was clear that they were very interested in what Qin Feng and Zhou Mo had obtained on the third floor. After all, that was the third floor that had never been opened before. If there really was something good, it would definitely be a rare treasure. It would be great if they could get a share of it. For Yulei, Mo Sun, and the others, this was a good opportunity to deal with Qin Feng. It was rare that everyone agreed to do this. "Qin Feng, hand over the treasures you obtained on the third floor." Mo Sun, Yulei, and Lei Jiuxiao immediately took a step forward, and dense spiritual energy swept out. Although the others didn't make a move, their eyes were locked on Qin Feng and Zhou Mo, waiting for an opportunity to move. Seeing this, Qin Feng's lips curled into a mocking smile. He reached out his hand and directly grabbed at Yulei. The giant hand of spiritual energy whistled down. At the same time, he punched out with a resplendent fist at Mo Sun. At the same time, he stomped at Lei Jiuxiao with his foot. What an arrogant thing! The three of them were furious. They attacked with all their strength to resist Qin Feng. This guy actually wants to fight 1 against 3? Everyone was shocked. They were shocked that Qin Feng would openly fight 1 against 3. In their opinion, although Qin Feng was strong and stronger than these people, that was all there was to it. It was impossible for him to fight 3 people by himself. Bang! The giant hand of spiritual energy smashed down on Yulei's head. The latter roared angrily, and the spiritual energy around him surged up. However, under the suppression of the giant hand, his spiritual energy slowly dissipated. Mo Sun shouted softly. His spiritual energy gathered and fiercely collided with Qin Feng's fist. Qin Feng's arm tightened, and he sent his fist forward. Fierce spiritual energy poured out from his fist and forced Mo Sun to retreat. At the same time, he stomped his foot. The air rippled, and spiritual energy fluctuated as he stomped on Lei Jiuxiao's face. The latter roared angrily. Qin Feng's action was undoubtedly humiliating him. He raised his hands high, and spiritual energy surged as he fiercely attacked. However, Qin Feng's foot was like a giant mountain, and it carried a heavy aura as it fell, causing Lei Jiuxiao's body to sink. Chapter 521. From afar, all the experts were dumbstruck as they stared dumbfoundedly at the scene before them. Suppressing Yulei with his palm, punching Mo Sun with his fist, stepping on Lei Jiuxiao with his foot, fighting 1 against 3, and even showing signs of suppressing them. Was this Qin Feng still human? What did this guy obtain in the third layer? Everyone's eyes burned with excitement. Qin Feng's strength had increased so much, it must be related to the treasures in the third layer. Some of them looked at each other before nodding and taking a step forward, preparing to attack. "If you want to make a move, you'll have to pass through me first." Zhou Mo stood in front of them, spirit energy surging from his body. Everyone's expressions became solemn. Although they knew that Zhou Mo was very strong, none of them retreated. Those who could enter the second layer all had some skill. However, just as they were about to attack, Qin Feng suddenly smiled and said, "Zhou Mo, you don't need to take action to deal with these guys, I alone am enough." "Humph, what shameless boasting. Yulei sneered. Although he was shocked by Qin Feng's rapid increase in strength, the three of them had all absorbed a lot of exotic desolate world energy, and their strength had also increased. No matter how strong Qin Feng was, it would be difficult for him to win against the three of them. Do you think that just because you barely broke through to the half-step 9th layer heavenly realm, you're invincible? I don't believe that you'll be able to show your might in front of the three of us today. Saying so, the three of them simultaneously erupted with even stronger spirit energies and attacked Qin Feng. Qin Feng's figure slightly trembled, but there was still a sneer on his face. In the next moment, an even more violent spiritual energy swept out from his body, and it almost destroyed the spiritual energy of the three people as easily as breaking dry branches. Then, his hands, fists, and feet came into contact with the three's bodies. Pucci. The three were sent flying at the same time, coughing up blood as they stared at Qin Feng in disbelief. Half-step peak. With the exception of Zhou, everyone present was dumbfounded. Qin Feng had actually reached the peak of the half-step 9th stage heavenly realm and defeated Yulei, Mo Sun, and Lei Jiuxiao in a single move. Just what kind of heaven-defying fortuitous encounter did this fellow obtain on the 3rd level? Many people were envious, but their gazes became even more serious. After sending the three of them flying, Qin Feng withdrew his attack and shook his head, saying, "The current you guys are too weak in our eyes. Who else wants to fight? Come at me together." Qin Feng stood in the air with one hand behind his back. His expression was indifferent and calm. His robe fluttered in the wind, and spiritual energy roared around him, releasing an extremely strong sense of oppression. For a time, the surroundings were silent. At this moment, Qin Feng actually gave them the feeling of a mountain pressing down on their heads. This guy. Looking at Qin Feng, who was facing so many masters alone without batting an eyelid, Ai Tianxing and Luan looked at each other and smiled bitterly. At that time, they could still compete with Qin Feng, and their strength was almost the same, but now they had been left far behind by Qin Feng. Each of them defeated 3 young masters with a single move. Just based on this point alone, they couldn't do it. They're all half-step peak, but how can this guy be so strong? Not far away, Yi Wu and Xiao Ni's eyes flickered. Qin Feng's strength was beyond their expectations. "He seems to have touched upon the strength of our realm," Xiao Ni said in a serious tone. Yi Wu nodded. After the baptism of the exotic desolate world energy, people like Mo Sun and Yulei had already reached half-step peak, and even the weakest of them were close to it. They didn't rely on the accumulation of years, and each of them had excellent talent. Unless it was someone at the 9th stage heavenly realm, it was almost impossible to crush the three of them. However, Qin Feng had done it. This could only mean that his spirit energy had not crossed the threshold of heavenly, but his strength had already touched upon it. This was a bit shocking. Although half-step heavenly realm and 9th stage heavenly realm were only half a step apart, the gap between them was like a chasm between heaven and earth. Since ancient times, no one had been able to fight below this realm. At least, they knew that no one had been able to do so, and there were no records of this. It could be said that the 9th stage heavenly realm was the boundary between the strong and the weak, a watershed in the cultivation world. In everyone's knowledge, it was impossible to fight below this realm. Even someone as conceited as Yi Wu and Xiao and I believed that if they fought a real 9th stage heavenly realm master at half-step peak, the one who would die would definitely be them. Qin Feng, at half-step peak, had the strength of a 9th stage heavenly realm master. This was indeed terrifying. Mo Sun and the others were stunned, unable to accept all of this. Had Qin Feng really left them far behind? Before entering Heavenly Secret Pavilion, they believed that they were only slightly weaker than Qin Feng, but now, the three of them couldn't even block a single blow from him. Who else covets my treasures? Qin Feng glanced around. The current him had absolute confidence in facing these masters without fear of being besieged. Of course, the premise was that Yiwu and Xiao and I didn't take action. Everyone looked at each other, the dread in their eyes gradually disappearing under the temptation. Qin Feng being able to become so strong meant that he had obtained some benefits in the third layer. If they could also get a share of those benefits, it would definitely be a great boost to their combat strength. Everyone, don't be afraid of him. He hasn't even reached the 9th stage heavenly realm. Do you think we can't defeat him if we join forces? Someone said. That's right, Qin Feng wasn't at the 9th stage heavenly realm. With so many of them joining forces, how could they not be his opponent? Driven by this mentality, many people had a fierce look in their eyes. Hong. Suddenly, a spirit energy fluctuation not weaker than Qin Feng's erupted. Zhou Emo stood beside him, forming a powerful pressure. She looked around and didn't say anything, but she had already made her position clear. Zhou Emo has also reached half-step peak? Many people's eyes began to flicker. Among these people, the ones with the biggest changes were Qin Feng and Zhou Emo, because these two were the only two who hadn't reached half-step 9th stage heavenly realm in Yen City's guild finals. Now that both of them had entered the third layer, and she had also broken through to half-step peak, it was likely that her strength wasn't any weaker than Qin Feng's. Against Qin Feng, they were confident, but with Zhou Emo joining in, the situation would be difficult to control. If you want to deal with Emo, you'll have to pass through my Zhou family first. Zhou Emo stood beside Zhou Xianwu with a few Zhou family disciples. At the same time, Song Su and Song Yuan also walked over and stood behind Qin Feng. With their participation, those who wanted to make a move were even more apprehensive. Treasures of heaven and earth belong to those who are capable. Qin Feng and Zhou Emo have already shown their strength and obtained our recognition. When both sides were in confrontation, Huang Fuyao suddenly appeared between them and said, "It's time for this farce to end. Qin Feng's strength has already surpassed all of you, and if you continue being overbearing, then even I won't be able to continue watching." Everyone's eyes flashed and their hearts sank. Huang Fuyao had intervened. He was standing on Qin Feng's side and didn't allow them to make a move. Some people thought for a while and retreated. Now, not only did Qin Feng have Zhou Emo and the Zhou and Song families, but he also had the support of the first princess. It wouldn't be good for them to continue confronting each other. It was better to give the first princess some face and stop as soon as possible. With a few people retreating, the others hesitated for a moment before retreating with the same mentality. This Huang Fuyao really knows how to act at a critical moment. Yiwu curled her lips. How could she not know Huang Fuyao's intentions? The secret pavilion is about to enter hibernation. Let's leave quickly. Saying that, Huang Fuyao glanced at Qing and nodded. He didn't stay any longer and flew out of the secret pavilion. The others quickly followed. Chapter 522. Discussing the attack on Blackwater Mountain. After leaving Heavenly Secret Pavilion, the elders of the various clans hurriedly brought their disciples back to their families and prepared various herbs and pills to nourish their bodies and stabilize their cultivations. Although exotic desolate world energy could accelerate a cultivator's body's compatibility with world energy, with the assistance of special herbs and pills, this process could be sped up. Heavenly Secret Pavilion's exotic desolate world energy only appeared once every 50 years. This was a great opportunity, so the various clans naturally made preparations to allow their disciples to undergo the most perfect transformation. After all, this was related to breaking through to the 9th stage heavenly realm, so no one dared to be careless. The birth of a 9th stage heavenly realm master was enough to increase the overall strength of their clan. The Song family was also very loyal to Qin Feng and had prepared a set of follow-up resources for him, allowing him to display the exotic desolate world energy in his body to its fullest extent. Qin Feng had the 100 tribulation heaven-swallowing secret art, so he was not worried about wasting exotic desolate world energy. Therefore, he did not care much about this, but since the Song family had prepared so much, Yang Kai had no intention of refusing such good things and gladly accepted them. While the disciples of the various clans were in retreat, hoping to quickly break through to the 9th stage heavenly realm, some news about Heavenly Secret Pavilion began to spread. Among them, the most eye-catching news was naturally the legendary appearance of the 3rd floor. Qin Feng and Zhou Emo had entered the 3rd floor. However, as for what was on the 3rd floor and what they had obtained there, no one knew, because the two of them were in retreat and had not made any statements about this matter. However, regarding the sudden increase in their strength, all parties were paying close attention. Some people even revealed that after Qin Feng returned from the 3rd floor, he had single-handedly defeated Yu Lei, Mo Sun, and Lei Jiushao, achieving astonishing result. Others said that Qin Feng had defeated 3 young masters, and in the end, it was said that Qin Feng's strength had soared, allowing him to suppress Yu Lei, Mo Sun, and Lei Jiushao with a flip of his hand, shocking everyone else. Qin Feng was the only person the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets had created. Everyone else had been reduced to mere background characters. This matter was rumored to be miraculous, and everyone said that it was due to the 3rd floor's treasures. Qin Feng obtained an incredible opportunity, and in the end it was even rumored that this opportunity was still with him, and had not been completely digested. This kind of news spread more and more widely. In the end, it directly evolved into a rumor that Qin Feng had a treasure that could rapidly increase his strength. The other main character of this matter, Zhou Emo, was completely sidelined. All the focus was on Qin Feng. As for why things had turned out this way, those with discerning eyes were very clear in their hearts. Someone was targeting Qin Feng, making him the target of public criticism and arousing public hatred. The Zhou clan was a big family, so they naturally had to be careful. However, Qin Feng was different. He was a loner, so they could do whatever they wanted to him. 3 days later, the majority of the people who had entered the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets had come out of seclusion, and their strength had taken a step forward. There were even a few, such as the Yi clan's Ai Tianxing and the Mo clan's Luan, who had touched upon the barrier of the 9th heaven realm. They were only one opportunity away from breaking through. No one refuted the rumors that had been circulating in the past few days. Some people even confirmed that the rumors were true. Qin Feng really did have a very precious treasure on him, and it was this treasure that had allowed him to achieve a super breakthrough, allowing him to stand above all other powerhouses. With these people's confirmation, no one doubted this matter. They all believed that Qin Feng had an incredible treasure on him. During this time, Qin Feng had not been in seclusion, so he had also heard the rumors circulating in the outside world. In particular, the words of some people after coming out of seclusion caused his face to turn cold. As the saying went, one should not reveal one's wealth. These people clearly did not know what he had obtained on the 3rd floor, but their words were clear and logical, and their tone was so certain that they wanted to kill him. "I have to leave this place quickly," Qin Feng muttered to himself. He could not stay in Great Yen City any longer. There were too many rumors about him outside, and it was difficult to guarantee that no one would covet the so-called treasure and attack him. Before this matter completely fermented, he had to leave this place quietly. It was useless whether he responded or not. If he did not respond, others would think that he had acknowledged the treasure on him, but if he responded, would he be able to tell others that he had obtained dozens of drops of 9 heavens spiritual liquid? Therefore, the best way was to leave this place as soon as possible. However, just as he was about to pack his things and leave, the 9th princess sent a letter to him, inviting him to the Yi clan for a chat. She had something important to discuss with him, and said that the herbs he needed had been gathered. "Damn, I almost forgot about this." Qin Feng slapped his forehead. He had almost forgotten about the herbs for the Sambodhisattva divine pulp. If he sneaked away, these things would be gone. It could be said that the Sambodhisattva divine pulp was the foundation of his cultivation of Zhou Tian's death scripture. It was quite important. After thinking about it again and again, Qin Feng decided to go. After leaving the Song clan, Qin Feng walked towards the Yi clan. As he walked on the street, he immediately attracted a lot of attention. Among them, Qin Feng acutely sensed that a few cold gazes were sweeping over him. It was the older generation experts who were probing him. In his palm, the demonic eye opened and closed, and a flow of air that was invisible to the naked eye slowly spread throughout his body, blocking the probing of these experts. Behind the crowd, in the distant tall buildings, in the pavilions on both sides of the street, there were many experts watching him, but they did not find anything. Even the jade mirror can't see him. It's a blur. It seems that he really has an incredible treasure on him that can shield him from detection, someone whispered, their eyes flashing. After arriving at the Yi clan, Qin Feng was led to a side courtyard by a person. Under a willow tree there was a stone table, and a few people were standing in front of the crowd. Among them, the most obvious were naturally Huangfu Huan and Yi Wu. In addition, there was Xiao and Ai Tianqing, Yi Hua, and Zhou Mo from the Zhou clan. Seeing so many people gathered here, Qin Feng knew that the little princess was going to make a move on MT Blackwater. Qin Feng, come here quickly. We're just waiting for you. After seeing Qin Feng, Huangfu Huan hurriedly waved at him. Qin Feng walked over. He knew that if he did not help the 9th princess solve this matter, he would not be able to get what he needed, so he did not delay. He directly asked, "When are we going to make a move?" Huangfu Huan was stunned, then her big eyes curved as she smiled and said, "You're quite tactful, aren't you?" Qin Feng rolled his eyes. "If you can keep this matter to yourself and not be so shameless, I can't be bothered to care about you. Let's make a deal. Once the matter of MT Blackwater is settled, you have to give me everything you owe me before and the reward this time in one go," Qin Feng reminded her. "Don't worry. I won't take a single cent from you." Huangfu Huan patted her chest and promised, "Come over quickly. Let's discuss the battle plan." In the dead of night, everyone discussed the perfect battle plan. They would leave Great Flame City at this time tomorrow. Everyone went back to prepare. Only Qin Feng stood there and did not move. "What? Do you have something to say?" Yi Wu looked at Qin Feng in surprise. "Those who come are guests. Since I'm leaving, you should at least send me off," Qin Feng said. Yi Wu was stunned and immediately understood. She immediately smiled and said, "So there are times when you're afraid too." Chapter 523. Transaction. A cold wind blew through the dark streets. The moon was bright and the stars were sparse in the night sky. The bright moonlight poured down like the Milky Way, covering the earth with a layer of silver. Qin Feng and Yi Dance walked on the quiet streets, heading towards the Song clan. Their light and rhythmic footsteps were particularly ear-piercing in this quiet street. Yi Dance glanced at Qin Feng from time to time. In the end, she couldn't help but ask unhappily, "Don't you have anything to say to me?" 9 Heavens Spiritual Elixir. Qin Feng stopped and looked up at the crescent moon in the sky. "What?" Yi Dance was stunned by Qin Feng's straightforwardness. Qin Feng turned around and looked at her. "I obtained the 9 Heavens Spiritual Elixir on the 3rd floor. You can ask Zhou Mo about this." "It really is the 9 Heavens Spiritual Elixir?" Yi Dance asked. Qin Feng nodded. Looking at Yi Dance's expression, he knew that she didn't have any suspicions. She should have heard about it from Zhou Mo. This was what he had discussed with Zhou Mo. If there was really no other way, they would give away the 9 Heavens Spiritual Elixir. In any case, this was the truth. Although that little girl didn't want to reveal it, from her tone, it should be quite a lot. Zhou Mo asked Qin Feng. "Yes, there are more than 10 drops." Qin Feng nodded in response. In fact, he had about 60 to 70 drops on him. He deliberately said less. But even so, Dance was still shocked. More than 10 drops of 9 heavens spiritual elixir was a huge amount. At least with her family's background, she couldn't easily take out so much 9 heavens spiritual elixir. Every drop of 9 heavens spiritual elixir could cause a mad scramble, let alone more than 10 drop. Seeing her shocked expression, Qin Feng was rendered speechless. If she were to know that he and Zhou Mo had swallowed 6 to 7 droplets in one go, only to end up losing quite a bit due to being unable to assimilate all of them in an instant, he wondered how she would react. "Give me some." Dance directly stretched her hand in front of Qin Feng and demanded. Qin Feng glanced at her. "What? You want to rob me? You're a spiritual elixir with a fortune elixir. Everyone's spiritual elixir. If you want to use me and the force behind me as your protective talisman, you have to do something," Yiwu said. Qin Feng raised his eyebrows. He had dozens of drops of 9 heavens spiritual elixir, so he didn't care about 1 or 2 drop. However, since he had to give it away, he had to use it well. "It's not that I can't give it to you, but let me make one thing clear. I only have 12 drop. Due to an accident on the 3rd level, I had to take 2 drop. So, I only have 10 drops now. I can give you 2 drops, but you have to guarantee my safety in Great Yen City," Qin Feng said. The corner of Dance's mouth twitched. She stared at Qin Feng and curled her lip. "You're doing a pretty good deal. You don't know how many people are eyeing you now. Just 2 drops of 9 heavens spiritual elixir, and you want me to risk my life for you? You're not risking your life for me, but we each take what we need." Qin Feng shook his head with a smile and said, "You need the 9 heavens spirit liquid, and I need the prestige of the family in Great Yen City. I think that as long as you stand by my side, there shouldn't be anyone blind enough to attack me. If that's the case, why don't you ask the Song family for help? You're their son-in-law." Dance curled her lips. Qin Feng shook his head. It wasn't that he didn't want the Song family to stand up for him, but he didn't want to get too involved with them. He would leave sooner or later. Moreover, very few people mentioned his identity as the Song family's son-in-law anymore. He didn't want to complicate things. If he wasn't waiting for news from Jingwei, Tan Xian, and the others, he would have left the Song family long ago. Most importantly, he definitely wouldn't follow those older generation figures. These people's hearts were completely black. They didn't have any thoughts that could shake the family's interests first. He didn't believe that the Song family's higher-ups wouldn't covet his so-called treasure. Wouldn't dealing with them be jumping into a fire pit? The reason why he approached Dance was because of the power behind her. Apart from the imperial family, the Song family was the largest family in Great Yen City. Secondly, it was because of her own influence. The identity of the emperor's personal disciple wasn't just for show. "I don't want to get involved with the Song family. It's better for us to live our own lives." Qin Feng shook his head. He glanced at Dance and said, "I'll leave soon. If you agree to guarantee my safety during this period, I can give you 2 drops of the 9 heavens spiritual elixir now. I'll pay you another 2 drops when I leave. Of course, if you feel that you're at a disadvantage, I can also find someone else." After saying that, Qin Feng walked forward with his hands behind his back. Looking at Qin Feng's back, Dance's eyes flickered for a moment. She quickly caught up with him. She ran her fingers through her hair and said, "Since you insist, I can't refuse." As she said that, she directly stretched out her jade-like hand and raised her eyebrows at Qin Feng. Qin Feng smiled and sucked out 2 drops of the 9 heavens spiritual elixir from the jade bottle. Dance's eyes lit up. With a wave of her jade-like hand, a white light flashed. She took out a jade container and quickly stored the 9 heavens spiritual elixir. Then, she waved her hand and directly snatched the jade bottle in Qin Feng's hand. Dance, what are you doing? Qin Feng panicked when his hand was empty. Dance was too unreasonable. Look at how anxious you are. Who would snatch it from you? After checking the amount of 9 heavens spiritual elixir in the jade bottle and confirming that there were only 8 drops left, she returned the jade bottle to Qin Feng. She glanced at him and said, "Take it. Isn't it just a few drops of 9 heavens spiritual elixir? Do you have to be so nervous?" Qin Feng was speechless. Who was the one who didn't believe him and insisted on snatching it? He was sure that if he put all the 9 heavens spiritual elixir together, this person would definitely rob him. "We agreed that you would give me the remaining 2 drops when you leave." As she said that, Dance's gaze suddenly froze. "You're leaving? Why? When?" "After I help the little princess solve the matter of MT Blackwater, she should be able to give me my things. At that time I should leave this place. I can't stay here for long." Dance looked at him and paused for a moment. She said, "Are you worried that someone will attack you?" "Actually, you don't have to be so worried. With Huan here, as long as it appears, no one will dare to do anything to you." Qin Feng shook his head. He did have this concern, but it wasn't the main thing. He still had many things to do. He had never forgotten why he left the primitive land. Under the heaven abyss, his ancestors and descendants were still suffering. At that time, they desperately sent him out and continued to live in hellish pain day after day without any hope. He had to solve all of this. Therefore, he couldn't keep an eye on the northwest region of this continent. "I naturally have my own things to do. I can't stay in Great Yen City forever." Qin Feng shook his head and didn't want to say anything more. Chapter 524. Attack the Blackwater Mountain. Wu looked at Qin Feng and felt a little touched. This was the first time he had shown such a gloomy mood. For a moment, he didn't know how to comfort him. He could only pat Qin Feng on the shoulder and comforted him. When heaven is about to give a great responsibility to a great man, it must first torment his will. Everyone had their own secrets. For Qin Feng to achieve so much at such a young age, she knew a little about the hardships he had gone through. "You're reciting a poem." Qin Feng shook his head and smiled, temporarily casting these thoughts aside. No matter how he ascended to the heavens to ask for orders, to overthrow the cruel slavery system of the primitive world, to clear the injustice of his ancestors, or to resolve the disaster and curse of his bloodline, none of these were things that he could do now. Right now, the most important thing for him to do was to survive in this strange world. He could only think about other things after that. Flatten Blackwater Mountain. When the time comes, you have to speak for me. I'm worried that the little princess isn't someone who keeps her word. Qin Feng said. That's really possible. This girl isn't someone who keeps her word. When the time comes, she'll definitely make things difficult for us. Hearing this, Qin Feng's mouth twitched. But she would only do this to her friends. Dance looked at Qin Feng and said, based on my understanding of Huan, she treats you as a friend. Friends? Qin Feng was startled. He thought of the 9th princess in the imperial capital. After a long time, he sighed. I'm not qualified to be friends with a princess. Hey, being friends with Huan is the dream of many young talents in Great Yen City. However, there are only a few people who can truly make her treat them as her friend. You must have done a lot of good deeds in your previous life to have such an honor. Seeing Qin Feng's reluctant look, Yiwu said angrily, Don't take it for granted. Qin Feng shook his head and smiled, a look of reminiscence appearing on his face as he whispered, There was once a princess who was loved by everyone. She treated me wholeheartedly, but in the end, because of me, she was covered in cuts and bruises. If I could start over, I would rather have never known her. The person he felt the most guilty towards in the primitive land was the 9th princess. Back then, she really did her best. Even when she was targeted by the imperial capital, she still helped him without hesitation. Even after knowing that several of her brothers had died in his hands, she still couldn't bring herself to kill him. Qin Feng admitted that he had indeed met the ninth princess with some ulterior motive. However, he had only wanted to make use of her illustrious status to give him some convenience. He had never thought of harming her. If he had known that such a day would come, perhaps he would not have lent a helping hand back then. Of course, if he had not lent a hand, the ninth princess might have died in the mouth of that spiritual beast. Perhaps this was the so-called fate. Between the two of them, there was no way to avoid this calamity. Yiwu didn't hear Qin Feng's whisper clearly, but seeing his sad expression, she couldn't help but ask curiously, "What did you say?" "Nothing." Qin Feng collected his thoughts and looked forward. He smiled and said, "Thank you for seeing me off. See you tomorrow." After that, he didn't give Yiwu time to ask any questions and quickly went in. Looking at the black figure nimbly flipping into the courtyard, Yiwu couldn't help but mutter, "What a strange guy. However, I'm also very curious about the outside world. It's time to go out and gain experience." The next day, Qin Feng stayed in his small courtyard for the whole day, occasionally teaching Song Shui and Song Xiaonian some cultivation. Under his request, the siblings were also qualified to enter the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets. Of course, they could only stay on the first floor. The exotic desolate spirit Qi on the first floor was definitely incomparable to the second floor, but for the siblings' strength, it was also a supreme opportunity. Now that their strength had increased a lot, they had also regained their status as the young miss and young master in the family. Compared to before he came, it was much better. As the sky darkened, Qin Feng and the siblings had dinner. He solemnly warned them, "Xiao Shui, Xiaonian, from tonight onwards, I need to go into seclusion to comprehend the 9 heavens realm. Before I come out, don't disturb me, and don't let anyone come near here." Big brother Qin Feng is going to break through to the 9th heavenly realm? Song Xiaonian looked at Qin Feng in shock. To him, the 9th heavenly realm was a realm that only the elders of the Song family with real power could reach. Song Shui's pretty face was also filled with shock, but more joy. "There's hope for a breakthrough, but I'm not very confident. I just have some comprehension. I need to try." Qin Feng shook his head and smiled. The two nodded repeatedly. Song Shui said, "Don't worry, big brother Qin Feng. We won't let anyone disturb your seclusion." Both of their expressions were very solemn. They knew the danger of going into seclusion to break through to the 9th heavenly realm. If an accident happened, they would be seriously injured or even die. Qin Feng nodded slightly. He had already informed Song Yun about his seclusion. Presumably, no one would come looking for him again. Because the 9th princess didn't want others to know about it, they all acted in secret and couldn't let others know. At night, he secretly left the Song family through the back door. He released his spiritual perception and hid his figure. After making sure that no one was following him, he quickly ran to the gathering point. Very soon, everyone had gathered. Other than Huangfu Huan, everyone was an expert. Yiwu and Xiao and I, the 2 9th heavenly realm experts, Ai Tianxing, Zhou Mo, and Luan, who hadn't participated in the meeting before. Any one of these 3 could easily defeat an ordinary half-step 9th stage heavenly master. As for himself, he was almost invincible in this realm. Such a lineup was enough to defeat the entire Black Water Mountain. Together with Ihua, who claimed to be doing odd jobs, the group of 8 left Great Yen City under the cover of night and headed toward the unfolding mountain range. Huangfu Huan had a high-grade flying Dharma artifact, so they were very fast. Before dawn, they arrived at the unfolding mountain range. They didn't hide at all and directly charged toward Black Water Mountain. "This is the place. When they captured me, that one-eyed man even wanted me to be his wife. If Qin Feng hadn't saved me, I don't know what would have happened to me." Huangfu Huan pointed at Black Water Mountain, not far away. She was so angry that she was about to burst into tears. She still shuddered when she recalled the scene at that time. She was a princess who was adored by thousands. When had she ever experienced such a thing? What? There's such a thing? Xiao and I was shocked. Before this, Huangfu Huan hadn't told him what was going on, so Xiao and I, Zhou Mo, Ai Tianxing, and the others didn't know why the ninth princess did this. Now that he heard her say this, Xiao and I was about to explode. His beloved sister had suffered such a great humiliation. Today, I'll wash Blackwater Mountain with blood. With a whoosh, his body disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already above Blackwater Mountain. At the same time, his voice, filled with violent killing intent, exploded above Blackwater Mountain like thunder. Chapter 525. Pushing down, one-eyed old man, come out and die. A thunderous roar echoed through Blackwater Mountain. This was Xiao Ni's angry roar. He wrapped himself in spiritual energy and poured it down. Many people from the Blackwater Mountain turned pale and felt their chests tighten. They looked at the mysterious expert who suddenly appeared in the sky with a horrified expression. Everyone was shocked. Who was this person? How could he break through the layers of barriers below? Who dares to be so presumptuous? Are you tired of living? Suddenly, a roar rang out. Immediately after, a burly man holding a mace rushed up, his body surging with a murderous aura. His body was wrapped in animal skin, revealing his bronze chest. On his arms, blue veins were wriggling like dragons. Most importantly, one of his eyes was covered with a black cloth. Your Blackwater Mountain's leader, one-eyed old man? Xiao and I stared at him and said coldly, Don't be presumptuous. I'm Blackwater Mountain's tyrant, Hu Ba. Hu Ba stared at Xiao and I with one eye and waved the mace in his hand. Suddenly, a burst of sonic booms rang out. Although Hu Ba was overbearing on the surface, he was actually shocked. Who was this person? He had reached the 9th stage at such a young age. Without a doubt, this person's background wasn't simple. The key was that he had never seen this person before, so why was he acting like this? *Xiao. Just as he thought this, sonic booms rang out one after another. Immediately after, a tidal wave of spirit energy pressure spread out, causing Hu Ba's expression to change slightly. 2 9th stage Heavenly Realm Masters, 5 half-step 9th stage Heavenly Realm Masters, this. Hu Ba's face sank. What was going on? Why had such a lineup suddenly appeared at his doorstep? This made him shocked. When had he offended such a big shot? Why had so many masters come to kill him? Everyone, is there some misunderstanding? Hu Ba cupped his hands and said in a slightly softer tone. One-eyed old man, do you still recognize her? Xiao and I pointed at Huangfu Huan and asked coldly. Hu Ba looked at Huangfu Huan and stared at her for a long time before frowning and saying, I don't know her. Today, Huangfu Huan was wearing a decent formal dress, revealing a noble aura. She was completely different from the girl next door. As for Hu Ba, he had been mingling with women for a long time, so it was normal for him to not recognize him. However, this made Huangfu Huan furious. At that time, she had almost suffered a tragedy that she would never be able to make up for in this lifetime. However, this guy actually forgot everything. She took a step forward, and her small face was covered with frost. One-eyed dragon, open your dog eyes wide and see if this person recognizes me, the person who almost became your wife. At first, Hu Ba was still confused, but when he heard the last sentence, he suddenly realized and said in surprise, You are that little girl from that time. So you admit that you kidnapped my sister and forced her to marry you? Xiao and I stared at Hu Ba with a cold smile on his face, revealing 2 rows of white teeth. Brother, there must be some misunderstanding. Feeling the killing intent from Xiao and I, Hu Ba hurriedly explained. He would never have thought that the background of the lady with the symbol would be so great to be able to invite so many experts to besiege her. Today you must die. Xiao Ni's eyes were filled with cold killing intent. Huang Fu Huan was the person he loved the most. No matter how much he suffered, he couldn't bear to see Huang Fu Huan, his aunt's only daughter, suffer any grievances. However, even under his careful care, such an unfortunate thing still happened to Huang Fu Huan. I really shouldn't have joined the army back then. Xiao and I muttered in a low voice as he stared at Hu Ba like a wild beast, causing his hair to stand on end. Give me your life. Xiao and I could no longer hold back his killing intent. The spiritual energy in his body erupted like a volcano. He turned into a ray of light and shot towards Hu Ba with a strong sonic boom. Do you really think that my black water mountain is easy to bully? At this moment, Hu Ba knew that his explanation wouldn't work. His vicious aura that had been mixed with the blade for many years was also angered. An even more powerful spiritual energy burst out. He has ascended to the second level, the second heaven realm. Feeling the oppressive spiritual energy fluctuation from Hu Ba's body, Qin Feng's eyes narrowed. Hu Ba was probably not weak in the second heaven realm. Immediately after, he looked at Xiao and I and frowned. Although Xiao and I was talented and had reached the first heaven realm at such a young age, his foundation was still weak. He didn't have a more powerful spiritual energy than Hu Ba. If he fought alone, he would be at a disadvantage. I'll go and help him. I'll leave the rest to you guys. Also, protect Huan. Yiwu ordered as she rushed over and joined the battle between Xiao and I and Hu Ba. Clearly, she could see that it was difficult for Xiao and I to be Hu Ba's opponent by himself. Boom! The battle between the three caused the spiritual energy of the heavens and earth to tremble. It spread out like a tide from the battle between the three of them. Everyone could only see that along with the earth-shaking explosions, the three figures were fighting back and forth in the sky. Every time they made contact, the space would ripple. The two of them should be able to deal with Hu Ba. We'll have to deal with the rest. Ai Tianxing said as fierce spiritual energy continued to spread out from his body. As far as they knew, Black Water Mountain only had one ninth heaven realm master. No matter how powerful the rest were, they couldn't pose the slightest hindrance to them. Whether it was Qin Feng, Ai Tianxing, Luan, or Zhouemo, they were all half-step ninth heaven realm masters. Ordinary masters of this level were no match for them. As for Yihua, although he was slightly weaker, he was also close to the peak of half-step under the baptism of the exotic desolate spirit Qi. It could be said that if Hu Ba didn't make a move, they could completely massacre Black Water Mountain. And the fact was indeed so. Under the attack of Ai Tianxing, Zhouemo, Luan, and Yihua, the people of Black Water Mountain couldn't resist at all. After the death of 5 half-step ninth heaven realm masters, they could no longer form the slightest defense and were completely defeated. Why didn't you help? Huang Fu Huan said with dissatisfaction as he glanced at Qin Feng, who was standing beside him indifferently. They've all gone to fight. Naturally, I have to stay by your side to protect you. Qin Feng said matter-of-factly. In fact, the person who should have stayed was Yihua. He and the other 3 would massacre Black Water Mountain, but Qin Feng didn't want to fight too hard. He had no grudges with this place. The little princess had once met with misfortune here, and the great Yan Empire had lost face. It was reasonable for them to take revenge, but he didn't need to fight too hard. In addition, Yihua was in high spirits, so the easiest job naturally fell to him. Huang Fu Huan glanced at the righteous Qin Feng and pouted. Although she didn't have much contact with Qin Feng, she knew this guy's temperament. If there was no special temptation, he would definitely fight to the side. If you don't pay, you won't get any credit for eradicating Black Water Mountain, Huang Fu Huan said. It doesn't matter. As long as you give me what I deserve, it's fine. There was another reason why Qin Feng didn't care too much. He didn't trust Huang Fu Huan and was worried that he would end up with nothing. Chapter 526. The situation reversed at the peak of Blackwater Mountain. The manor was filled with broken limbs, screams, and explosions. Without a master of Hu Ba's level, they were no match for Yi Tianxing, Zhou Mo, and the others. More than half of the half-step 9th stage Heaven Realm Masters were killed in a single exchange, and the rest were naturally unable to resist. Under the onslaught of these masters, they fled in all directions. "Don't let any of them go," Ai Tianxing said coldly and killed a small Heaven Realm late-stage expert with a casual slap. Luan, Zhou Mo, and Yi Huo were also in a killing frenzy. Just like Qin Feng's previous concerns, although they had only taken action after receiving some rewards, no matter what, the little princess was related to the reputation of the entire Great Yin Empire. If she had been captured here, it would have caused a disaster. This was undoubtedly a slap to the Great Yin Empire. As citizens of the Great Yin Empire, their families were the mainstays of the Great Yin Empire. Naturally, they would take revenge for such a thing. Qin Feng was relaxed. He only needed to watch the battle. As for protecting the little princess, there was no need at all. Under the impact of the dead, all the half-step 9th stage Heaven Realm experts were killed. There was no one left who could fight their way out of the encirclement of the four of them. At the sight of this tragic scene, Hu Ba's eyes widened and he attacked Xiao Anai and Yi Wu with all his might. He was also powerful, and he did not fall into a disadvantage under the joint attack of Xiao Anai and Yi Wu. Of course, he was powerless to save the others in Blackwater Mountain, so it was only a matter of time before this place was destroyed. Qin Feng glanced at the manor of Blackwater Mountain and lost interest. The battle here was basically under the control of Ai Tianxing, Zhou Mo, Luan, and Yi Huo. There should not be any reversal of the situation. He looked at the battle between the three people in the sky and narrowed his eyes. This Hu Ba did indeed have the qualifications to be arrogant. He had been on the knife's edge for many years, wandering in the midst of blood and slaughter. He was experienced and had rich battle technique. In addition, his own spiritual energy was strong and danced. Xiao and I. Therefore, even when he was besieged by the two of them, he did not show any signs of weakness. Sometimes, he would even use some vicious moves, strange moves, and reckless fighting methods to force the two of them back. For the Blackwater Mountain to be able to become the largest bandit group in the unfolding mountain range, there is indeed something special about them. Watching the battle between the three, Qin Feng nodded slightly, not being stingy with his evaluation. So what if he's powerful? He's going to die today. Huang Fu Huan curled his lip. Qin Feng smiled faintly and didn't refute. Although Hu Ba's aura was strong and he didn't show any signs of being defeated, he would definitely be defeated in the long run. Dance and Xiao and I were not ordinary Divine Realm Masters. Even if they were weaker than the other party, they had the strength to fight above their level. Therefore, the final victory would definitely belong to Dance and Xiao and I. It seems that you came here for nothing. Huang Fu Huan glanced at Qin Feng and said proudly with her chin raised. It doesn't matter. As long as you give me what you owe me. Qin Feng smiled. He wasn't sad about the reward for participating in the bloodbath of the Blackwater Mountain. As long as she could give him what he owed before, he would be satisfied. Huang Fu Huan pursed her lip. Especially when she saw Qin Feng's indifferent expression, she felt even more depressed. Others were thinking of ways to please her, but this guy was avoiding her like she was a poisonous scorpion. Boom! Suddenly, a loud sound rang out. Another extremely strong aura erupted and instantly filled the entire Blackwater Mountain. Another 9th stage Heaven Realm Master. Qin Feng raised his head and looked over. Then, his pupils shrank fiercely. Two figures flew back awkwardly and spat out blood. It's AI Tianxing and Luan. Qin Feng's expression changed slightly. The two had suffered heavy injuries. The situation here also made Xiao and Yi Dance's expressions change slightly. No one expected that Black Water Mountain would have a 9th stage Heaven Realm Master who had been hiding and attacking at the critical moment. AI Tianxing and Luan were both seriously injured. "Come back quickly!" Qin Feng shouted. The intelligence was wrong. Black Water Mountain had not only one 9th stage Heaven Realm Master, but two. The second one had been hiding and was planning to attack when they let their guard down. The result was exactly what they wanted. AI Tianxing and Luan were seriously injured. In fact, at this moment, there was no need for him to remind them. Zhou Mo and Yihua quickly retreated. Feeling the other powerful aura, Qin Feng couldn't help but whisper, "What kind of lousy intelligence is this? Didn't it clearly say that there was only one 9th stage Heaven Realm Master?" He had warned them before that Black Water Mountain might have two masters of this level, but Huangfu Huan, Yi Dance, and the others were very confident in their intelligence and were certain that there was only one. The intelligence can't be wrong. At this moment, Huangfu Huan's pretty face was slightly pale. She knew that the strength of a 9th stage Heaven Realm Master could definitely turn the situation around if Yi Dance and Xiao and Yiting didn't act. Especially since they had lost two generals, it was even more impossible for them to compete with this master. Xiao. After this 9th stage Heaven Realm Master attacked, several more figures shot out from behind Black Water Mountain Manor. Moreover, spirit chi surged. Obviously, these were all half-step 9th stage Heaven Realm Masters. How come there are still so many? At this moment, even Qin Feng was a little shocked. Even if he could barely block this 9th stage Heaven Realm Master and buy time for Yi Dance and Xiao and I. But there were still 5 or 6 half-step 9th stage Heaven Realm Masters here. Could Zhou Mo and Yihua, who had already experienced a bloody battle and exhausted a lot of their strength, stop them? Ha! Brother Chen, if we take care of these, I'm afraid the treasures we will exchange for will be unprecedented. Seeing Chen Wujiu attack, Hu Ba laughed. Two forces. Qin Feng was stunned, but when he heard Hu Ba's words, he instantly understood. The intelligence was right. Black Water Mountain indeed only had one 9th stage Heaven Realm Master, Hu Ba. It was just that the time they chose to take revenge was very unfortunate. They encountered two bandit groups together. Qin Feng's speculation was right. Black Water Mountain was indeed discussing with another bandit group in this area to do something big. After Qin Feng and the others appeared, Chen Wujiu planned to secretly leave because they could see that this group of people had a great background and couldn't be offended. However, he had been here for a long time and had done many things like robbing and killing. He was also ruthless and knew that the more dangerous the situation was, the greater the opportunity. Perhaps this was a great opportunity. Therefore, he hid in the dark with his elite subordinates and looked at the situation before deciding whether to take action. It was also a good opportunity to wipe out Black Water Mountain's strength. When Black Water Mountain's strength was almost wiped out and Qin Feng's people were exhausted, he thought that he could eat these people and use them to force the forces behind them to take out enough treasures to ransom them. Then, he would run away. He originally wanted to capture the four while they were in the middle of killing, but they reacted too quickly and could only seriously injure two. Brother Hu, it's not too much for my 9-in stronghold to take 70% of the profits, right? Chen Wujiu looked at Hu Ba and smiled sinisterly. Hu Ba's expression paused for a moment before he quickly said, "Let's do as Brother Chen says, but you should know that these people have great backgrounds. Don't fail miserably." Chapter 527. Fighting a 9th Order Heaven Realm alone. As soon as his voice fell, Chen Wujiu directly charged towards Qin Feng. Vigorous spiritual energy with a strong smell of blood rushed towards Qin Feng. Feeling the terrifying power she was unable to resist, Huang Fu Huan's pretty face paled, and her tender body trembled. However, at that moment, a figure appeared in front of her and blocked all the spirit energy pressure for her. Huang Fu Huan was startled and a strange light flashed across her eyes. She had some understanding of Qin Feng. This kind of person absolutely didn't like to stir up trouble. Also, he wasn't of the same mind as them. When things were going smoothly, he would add flowers to brocade. But when things weren't going well and he encountered a crisis, he would definitely wash his hands of it. Of course, the premise was that there was a fatal crisis. Even without such a premise, he would still act courageously. She had thought that Qin Feng would just leave, but he had actually stood in front of her to face a ninth-order Heaven Realm Master alone. You're not leaving? Huang Fu Huan asked blankly. Can I leave? Qin Feng bitterly laughed. He stared at the approaching Chen Wujiu and helplessly said in a low voice, Yiwu said that there are very few people who can make you treat them as friends. And I am very fortunate to be one of those few people. Since you have already treated me as a friend, how can I leave at this time? In fact, when Chen Wujiu first appeared, Yang Kai had indeed intended to leave. After all, the current situation was very unfavorable for them, and there was no need for him to put himself in danger for them. He had not had much contact with them, so he did not have any feelings for them. Even if they were all killed, it would be because they were seeking revenge and had nothing to do with him, so he did not feel any psychological burden when he left. However, when this thought arose in his mind, for no reason, the scene of him bidding farewell to the ninth princess that day inexplicably appeared in his mind. Even in the end, she still wanted him to live well even though she had a deep hatred for him for killing her own family. At that moment, Yang Kai's heart trembled. Huang Fu Huan and the ninth princess were the same kind of people. Once they recognized each other as friends, they would not care about the difference in status. Although this woman always fooled him, when he was in trouble, she would not hesitate to help him. This was the case when he was targeted in the palace. In his heart, Huang Fu Huan couldn't even be considered a friend. However, she treated him as a true friend and stood by his side without hesitation when he was being targeted. Perhaps it was because he couldn't bear it, or perhaps it was because he wanted to make up for the regret between him and the ninth princess, so at the last moment, he stayed behind. Huang Fu Huan didn't know what Qin Feng was thinking, but his words made her body tremble. She looked at Qin Feng's back with tears in her eyes. Huang Fu Huan's heart trembled slightly as she looked at the group of people who were able to protect her from certain death. A strange feeling rose in her heart. Thank you. In the end, she could only say thank you. This was the first time in her life that she had sincerely thanked someone. No need to thank me. If you can solve this situation today, just remember to pay me what you owe me. Don't try to fool me again. Qin Feng laughed. I know. I'm not a person who doesn't keep his words. Huang Fu Huan couldn't help but laugh. Seeing the two people who were still talking and laughing after he approached, Chen Wujiu flew into a rage, and a fierce spiritual energy rushed toward him. Dao Yin Mode. Great Desolate Battle Body. Qin Feng instantly activated his strongest mode. He glanced at Zhou and Yihua and said, Zhou, block the remaining experts and stall for as much time as possible. Yihua, take Huang Fu Huan and leave. Go as far as you can. Okay. Zhou didn't say anything. Black light surged around his body as he rushed toward the experts of the Ninth Yin Fortress to block them. Yihua hesitated for a moment, then gritted his teeth and rushed toward Huang Fu Huan. Although he had a higher chance of winning if he joined forces with Zhou, Huang Fu Huan couldn't be alone. If anything happened to her, it would be useless even if they killed everyone here. Nothing was more important than Huang Fu Huan's safety. Little princess, let's leave quickly, Yihua said. I'm not leaving. Huang Fu Huan shook her head and said firmly, last time, I made my servant pay with his life to buy me a chance to escape. This time, I'm here for revenge. I'm not leaving. Yihua, if you're still a young hero of the great Yin Empire and a disciple of the Yi family, kill the enemies with all your might and protect the great Yin Empire and the dignity of the royal family. We can be defeated, but we'll never run away. Yihua was also excited by Huang Fu Huan's words, and his chest burned with fighting spirit. Yes, as a young hero of the great Yin Empire, he had his own pride. How could he run away without fighting? Okay, today, we'll kill Blackwater Mountain and Nine Yin Fortress. Ignorant kid. Chen Wujiu stared at Qin Feng and sneered. Then, he suddenly disappeared. Qin Feng's pupils shrank. He skillfully used the body-changing step and brushed past Chen Wujiu. Then, his body rotated 360 degrees, and his legs straightened. With a fierce force, he swept toward Chen Wujiu's head. At the same time, there were dragon roars. Seeming to be surprised by Qin Feng's reaction speed, Chen Wujiu sneered with disdain at the corner of his mouth. He lightly extended a hand and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth instantly gathered. After which, he lightly patted Qin Feng's leg that was whipping over. The moment the two forces collided and dissipated, he turned his palm into a claw and quickly grabbed Qin Feng's ankle. Qin Feng was restrained, but he did not panic at all. Spiritual power gathered in the soles of his feet, and suddenly, a fierce spiritual power poured out. Qin Feng's rich combat experience surprised Chen Wujiu. After being restrained, he could still think of such a way to save himself. It was indeed rare. He sneered and suddenly patted with his other hand. Spiritual power swept out and scattered Qin Feng's spiritual power. Buzz. At the same time, the air around him rippled, and invisible sharp blades shot out. However, they disappeared into thin air within a foot of his body. You're a spiritual power master. Chen Wujiu's face flashed with a touch of surprise, but then he sneered disdainfully. But your spiritual power is too weak. If you're at the upper earth grade, I might have been defeated. Qin Feng sighed in his heart. His spiritual power was too weak. Even if his attack was strange, it could not be used at this moment. If I catch you in close combat, other people at your level will die no matter how amazing they are. Chen Wujiu sneered. Spiritual power gathered in his palm, and he was about to shatter Qin Feng's calf. Perceiving a huge force coming, Qin Feng decisively opened his immortal Tensigen. Between his eyebrows, a red light lingered. Immortal light. At this moment, Chen Wujiu's hair stood on end. He quickly let go and almost instinctively teleported away. The immortal light shot out close to his temple, leaving a shallow bloodstain. Qin Feng took this opportunity to quickly retreat. His face was extremely dignified. He sighed in his heart. Sure enough, the immortal Tensigen was too difficult to control. Even if it was unexpected, it was difficult to really hit an expert of this level. Touching his temple, and looking at the bloodstain on his hand, Chen Wujiu's face was gloomy to the extreme. It was a great shame that he bled at the hands of an ant. Chapter 528. An intense battle. Chen Wujiu stared at Qin Feng with a cold gaze and endless killing intent. Being in the hands of such an ant made him feel humiliated. Don't worry, I won't kill you. I will break your bones bit by bit and marinate them in a wine jar. Chen Wujiu grinned and quickly rushed towards Qin Feng. Qin Feng retreated and covered his body with his mental strength. His figure disappeared into the air. Chen Wujiu was stunned when he saw this scene. However, he soon sneered, not bad. No one at the same level can do this. Unfortunately, no matter how many moves you have, you won't be able to change the situation. Chen Wujiu's face was filled with contempt. He quickly threw a punch in a direction. The space there rippled violently and a figure fell out. It's still not enough. Qin Feng sighed. With just one punch, his mental strength was scattered. In front of such an expert, hiding one's mental strength was useless. He took a deep breath and his fighting spirit soared. His body was tense and power was constantly surging out from his flesh. Since he couldn't avoid it, he would fight it head-on. Xiao and I, dance, quickly end the battle. I will hold them back. Qin Feng shouted. Seeing Qin Feng was fine after exchanging 2 moves with Chen Wujiu, dance and Xiao and I nodded. The latter said, Qin Feng, hold on for at most 5 minutes. We can end the battle here. After saying that, he and dance looked at each other and no longer held back. They raised their condition to the peak and their attacks became sharper and more vicious. They didn't even hesitate to exchange blows. Because they knew that they couldn't afford to waste any time. Once Qin Feng was defeated or dance couldn't block the attacks of several experts, they would be completely buried here. Therefore, they had no choice but to fight with their lives on the line, regardless of the cost. Under their siege, Huba also began to be surrounded by danger and fell into danger. Brother Chen, deal with that ant. Hurriedly dealing with the crazy attacks of the two, Huba shouted. Needless to say, Chen Wujiu was also angry. He was actually being looked down upon. This guy wasn't a 9th stage Heaven Realm Master, yet he dared to boast that he could hold him back. Wasn't he courting death? Heavenly Soul Bone-eroding hand. He shouted and directly used his powerful trump card to deal with Qin Feng. At this moment, Qin Feng's hair stood up and a chill ran down his spine. He realized that he was in great danger. He was confident that he could challenge a 9th stage Heaven Realm Master. But when facing a master of this Realm Master level, the pressure was great. The difference between the two. The main reason was that he had not set foot in this realm, so it was difficult for him to know the difference between the 9th stage and the half-step 9th stage Heavenly Realm. To put it simply, the former could mobilize the spiritual energy of heaven and earth for his own use, and did not need to worry about running out of spiritual energy. But he could only use his spiritual energy. There was a fundamental difference. Moreover, Chen Wujiu wasn't an ordinary First Heaven Realm Master. Judging from his aura, he had probably reached the Second Heaven Realm. In the sky, the wind howled and the wind howled. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered, and a blood-red hand slowly appeared. Immortal Light. Qin Feng used his Immortal Light again. Although the consumption was great, it was the only move he could use to injure a 9th stage Heaven Realm Master. Xiao. The world went silent. Then, a tyrannical aura spread out. In midair, a red mark appeared as the Immortal Light slammed into the giant blood-red hand. However, this time, the unstoppable undying light was no longer able to destroy everything in its path. Instead, it clashed with the gigantic hand. Qin Feng stared at the giant hand. Between his eyebrows, his immortal reincarnation eye opened. He endured the consumption of his world energy as a bloody light condensed in his eyes. Immortal Light! Qin Feng roared in rage. Another beam of undying light shot out, slamming into the gigantic hand. Pung! After a short stalemate, the giant hand shattered with a bang and a red light rushed towards Chen Wujiu. The latter's expression froze as he stared at the red light in disbelief. His move had been broken by his opponent. However, he wasn't a rookie and quickly dodged. Instead of retreating, he bypassed the Immortal Light and rushed towards Qin Feng. This was the first time he had used his immortal reincarnation 3 times in a row. Qin Feng staggered and couldn't dodge in time. He could only gather his world energy to his arms and then place them in front of his chest. At the same time, Chen Wujiu's palm hit his arm. Pung! Qin Feng suddenly retreated, the air behind him exploding. It was obvious how terrifying this palm was. His feet kept stepping in midair to stop his body from retreating. At this moment, his arms were numb, as if they didn't belong to him. His blood qi was surging, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. However, he he held back. At this time, he couldn't show that he was injured. Qin Feng's tenacity was beyond Chen Wujiu's expectation. Chen Wujiu's expression became gloomier. He thought that he could destroy an ant with one hand, but he had persevered until now. Since he had become enemies with such a person, he couldn't give him the slightest time to grow. As the killing intent grew in his heart, Chen Wujiu's world energy became more oppressive. Qin Feng's eyes were gloomy as black and white world energy rippled out from his body. Then, he suddenly hit out. Yin Yang hand, Yin Yang seal. The black and white hand stretched out, and the Yin Yang seal slowly rippled in the palm. Chen Wujiu snorted and waved his sleeve. His world energy swept out like a torrent, shattering the Yin Yang hand and the Yin Yang seal. Yin Yang arrow. Whoosh! A Yin Yang arrow with black and white light burst out. The moment the Yin Yang hand and the Yin Yang seal exploded, it shot towards Chen Wujiu. The latter sneered and caught the Yin Yang arrow with his bare hands. Instantly, his expression changed slightly, and even the world energy rippling around him became chaotic. What's going on? Chen Wujiu frowned. Why did the world energy in his body become chaotic? Moreover, he couldn't control his limbs. 10,000 beasts heavenly pearl. A pearl suddenly appeared beside Chen Wujiu. Then, it exploded with a loud bang. Various beasts appeared and rushed towards Chen Wujiu like a turbulent flow. At this moment, Qin Feng quickly closed in. At the same time, a gray savage peak was thrown out. Under the control of the yin-yang spiritual energy, it expanded rapidly and smashed heavily on Chen Wujiu's body. Bang! The latter was shot down like a cannonball. With a loud bang, the ground trembled and dust rose into the air. A section of the small mountain was smashed, and rocks rolled down. This strike caused the entire battlefield to be stunned. Everyone stared at Qin Feng in disbelief. He actually blasted Chen Wujiu flying through the air. How was this possible? After sending Chen Wujiu flying, Qin Feng didn't dare to stop. He controlled the huge savage peak and smashed it down on the broken mountain again. Rumble! In an instant, the entire mountaintop was shattered. Thick smoke rose up and huge rocks rolled down. Even the mountain itself was cracked open. After this attack, the savage peak shrunk to its normal size and fell into Qin Feng's hand. He looked down with a solemn expression. With his spiritual energy, he could barely control it twice. Otherwise, he would keep smashing it down and wouldn't give Chen Wujiu any time to breathe. However, would this be enough to seriously injure Chen Wujiu? Qin Feng didn't know. Chapter 529. The might of a forbidden art. After using the immortal light 3 times in a row and continuously using big moves, Qin Feng's spiritual energy was almost depleted, even in the Dao Yen mode. Moreover, his spiritual energy was close to exhaustion after controlling the savage peak. He did not have much combat power left. At this moment, everyone was staring at the shattered mountain with nervous expressions. Chen Wujiu's life or death directly affected the entire battle. If he died, Black Water Mountain and Nine Yin Fortress would definitely lose. However, if he was still alive, Qin Feng would not be able to continue fighting in his current condition. Then, no one from the Great Yen Empire would survive. Qin Feng was also staring at the mountain. He swallowed a few elixirs and quickly recovered his spiritual energy. At the same time, he circulated the 100 calamity heaven-devouring art to devour the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to replenish himself. The dust on the shattered mountain gradually dissipated. A breeze blew and swept away the last bit of dust. This place was completely exposed to everyone's gaze. When they saw the scene inside, everyone could not help but gasp. There was a huge pit with huge rocks lying around. Chen Wujiu was standing in the deep pit. At this moment, he was in a rather sorry state. His clothes were tattered, and there was a hideous wound on his chest. Blood dyed his chest red, and a part of his head was broken as well. Blood flowed out, staining his face and eyes red, making him look incomparably ferocious. "He's really tough," Qin Feng sighed. His body's balance was disturbed. He was attacked by the 10,000 beasts' heavenly pearl, and he was smashed twice by the savage peak. However, he was still not seriously injured. This showed how strong a ninth heaven realm expert was. When Hu Ba saw this, although he was shocked that Qin Feng could injure Chen Wujiu to this extent, he was still relieved. Chen Wujiu was in a sorry state, but his injuries were not too serious. On the other hand, Qin Feng was already exhausted and could not fight anymore. Their side had already secured victory. On the other hand, the hearts of Yi Wu, Xiao and I, and the others sank. Without Qin Feng blocking Chen Wujiu, once he joined the battle, they would be quickly defeated and all of them would be captured. "I didn't expect things to turn out like this," Xiao and I said in a low voice. His face was unprecedentedly solemn. He looked at Yi Dance and the latter looked back at him. A hint of madness appeared in their eyes. At this point, their only choice was to send someone to stop Chen Wujiu and allow Huang Fu Huanhuan to leave. However, they didn't know if they would succeed. But at the moment this was the only way. As long as Huang Fu Huanhuan could leave this place safely, it would be worth it even if they all died here. Sooner or later, Mount Blackwater and Fort 9 would be massacred and razed to the ground. "Yihua, take Huan and leave. Qin Feng, if you still have the strength, run away," Xiao and I said and walked towards Chen Wujiu with a determined look on his face. However, he felt slightly guilty toward Qin Feng. No matter what, Qin Feng was not from Great Yen City. He was only here to help. He did not expect his life to be in danger. Huang Fu Huanhuan's face was also deathly pale. They had no chance of turning the tables. The original plan remains unchanged. Suddenly, Qin Feng spoke. His tone was unusually calm. Everyone was stunned and looked at him in surprise. They could feel the emptiness in Qin Feng's body. That sense of weakness was definitely not an act. He no longer had the strength to fight. Xiao and I stared at Qin Feng with admiration on his face. Then, he shook his head and said, "We've already lost. Run away if you can." Qin Feng sighed heavily and muttered to himself, "Sigh. I don't think we've lost." "You?" Xiao and I stared at him, trying to figure out Qin Feng's situation. However, he couldn't see anything from Qin Feng's calm face and deep eyes. "Listen to him," Yi Wu suddenly said. She stared at Qin Feng with deep eyes. After all, she had fought with Qin Feng head-on. She knew that Qin Feng was not the kind of person who would speak without thinking. Since he said so, he must have some tricks up his sleeve. Xiao and I nodded and pulled back. Now was not the time to question Qin Feng. Chen Wujiu stared coldly at Qin Feng and sneered. "You don't know what's good for you. Let's see what else you can do to stop me." Qin Feng glanced at him and ignored him. He muttered to himself, "Dao Yen mode and primitive combat body have both been defeated. It seems like I can't stall for time. Should I use that move? But I can't fully use it yet. It seems like this is the only way." He closed his eyes and slowly formed a seal with his hands. His 10 fingers moved quickly, and an ancient technique was formed. Deliberately mystifying. Chen Wujiu sneered with disdain. However, he did not hold back. He stretched out 2 fingers and wanted to dig out Qin Feng's eyeballs. "Qin Feng, be careful." Sensing Chen Wujiu's ruthless move, several people hurriedly exclaimed. Chen Wujiu turned into a bolt of lightning. In a flash, he appeared in front of Qin Feng as fast as lightning. His 2 fingers were condensed with cold sharpness. Qin Feng suddenly opened his eyes. A red mark appeared on his chest. Forbidden technique, Zhou Tian death scripture, open the gate of life. A slightly hoarse voice came from his mouth. Then, everyone's eyes suddenly froze as they stared at this scene with their mouths agape. "What's going on?" Xiao and I murmured. His expression was as if he had seen a ghost. Actually, this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that Chen Wuzhou's body was stiff and his expression was frozen. His heart was filled with horror. His eyes were straight. Even though the cruel reality was right in front of his eyes were still filled with disbelief and deep fear. His 2 fingers were blocked by Qin Feng, while his 2 fingers were clamped by Qin Feng's thumb and index finger on his wrist. It was like an iron clamp, causing him intense pain and making him unable to move. How is this possible? The strong wind blew Qin Feng's slender bangs, revealing a pair of cold and emotionless pitch-black eyes. Chen Wuzhou's fear multiplied. Qin Feng's face was pale, but his eyes were like torches. The energy around his body was raging, and his robe was fluttering. Under the attack of the strong wind, his body was constantly trembling. Boom! Then, he suddenly threw out a punch. The fist seemed to have increased in size. The air directly exploded, forming a vacuum between the two. Chen Wuzhou's face was filled with fear. He wanted to dodge, but his wrist was caught. It was as if he was nailed to the ground. He could only watch as the terrifying fist landed on his chest. Poochie! His chest immediately caved in as a ferocious gust of wind directly passed through his body and shot out from his back, shattering the clothes on his back. Chen Wuzhou spat out a mouthful of blood, all of it splashed onto Qin Feng's face. Then, looking at his bloodthirsty face and red eyes, Chen Wuzhou's voice trembled. Let me go. Qin Feng's face was expressionless as he threw out a second punch. Along with the spreading of the energy, Chen Wuzhou's chest exploded. Blood, bones, and internal organs spurted out. In an instant, an extremely tyrannical force obliterated all of his vitality. After Qin Feng let go, Chen Wuzhou's body fell heavily to the ground. After killing Chen Wuzhou, Qin Feng also suffered from the backlash of the forbidden technique. Streaks of bloody light shot out from the surface of his body. His body could not withstand it, and his flesh split open. His vision turned black, and he quickly fell to the ground. Chapter 530. Splitting the spoils. Qin Feng had forcefully opened the gate of life under extreme exhaustion. Although he had killed Chen Wuzhou with 2 punches, he had also suffered heavy injuries. The backlash from a forbidden technique was not simple. It could easily lead to death. Moreover, he had just fought a bitter battle and was in a terrible state. The damage caused by the backlash was much more severe than when he was at his peak. I was too careless this time. Qin Feng couldn't help but smile bitterly as he endured the dizziness in his head. He had underestimated a 9th-stage Heaven Realm Master and thought that he could hold them back. If he had used Zhou Tianxing's death scripture from the start, the backlash would have been much better. Of course, it was hard to say whether he could kill Chen Wuzhou with 2 punches when he was at his peak. After all, the demon eye only said that Zhou Tianxing's death scripture could defeat a Heaven Realm Master after opening one. It didn't mean that he could suppress a Heaven Realm Master in this state. It was undeniable that he could kill Chen Wuzhou with 2 punches. The power of the Gate of Life was indeed great, but it was also because the latter was injured and careless. In short, it wasn't bad to be able to achieve this. Huangfu Huan controlled his flying artifact and quickly flew away. Yihua followed beside him to protect him, in case there were any fish that escaped the net. However, it was clear that he was overthinking things. After Chen Wuzhou was killed by Qin Feng, his elite subordinates had completely lost their will to battle. All of them were trembling with fear. Following the death of their chief, their side had no hope of victory. Even if they struggled to hold on, it was only for the final battle. At this moment, Hu Ba's heart sank to the bottom. Under Yi Wu and Xiao Ni's attacks, his defense was already very weak. In a moment of carelessness, he was hit in the chest by Xiao Ni. As he flew back, he was hit by Yi Wu's palm from behind. Hu Ba spat out a mouthful of blood. His aura suddenly weakened and he crashed into the pile of rocks below. Yiwu and Xiao and I followed suit. The spirit qi in their bodies erupted without restraint. They attacked crazily, not giving Hu Ba any time to breathe. On the ground, the spirit energy continued to roar and explode. The mountain rocks and giant trees were all shattered by the impact. Some of the larger boulders, under the surge of spirit energy, strangely floated and rotated, then smashed down like meteorites. The earth trembled and the air exploded. A figure shot out. His entire body was covered in blood and his aura was weak. Whoosh! Xiao and I flashed and appeared in front of Hu Ba like a ghost. He formed a strange seal with one hand and then heavily tapped on Hu Ba's body. When his finger touched Hu Ba's body, there seemed to be a few ripples of light that entered Hu Ba's body. Then, Hu Ba's spiritual energy suddenly disappeared as Xiao and I sealed his spiritual energy. Bang! Xiao and I kicked out and Hu Ba was sent flying. He only managed to stop after crashing into a huge boulder that weighed over 10,000 kilograms. Poochie! Hu Ba's face turned completely pale as he spat out a mouthful of blood. He was unyielding and did not beg for mercy. He only said coldly, "I, Hu Ba, admit defeat at your hands today. If you want to kill me, then do it quickly." Huan, how do you plan to deal with him? Xiao and I did not look at Hu Ba. He turned to Huangfu Huan and asked. Under Yiwu's attack, the elites of the Nine Yin stronghold who fought with Zhouemo were all killed. This place was already flattened, and there was no more danger. Huangfu Huan supported Qin Feng and walked over. She glanced at Hu Ba indifferently and said, "Dumbfounded. Wait a minute." Xiao and I was about to attack, but Qin Feng stopped him. He walked over to Hu Ba and said, "Let me do this." Looking down at the heavily injured Hu Ba, Qin Feng used the remaining spirit qi in his body to circulate the 100 calamity heaven-devouring technique. The devouring power exploded and devoured all of Hu Ba's spiritual energy. Under the shocked gazes of the others, Hu Ba's body continued to shrink until he was only skin and bones. After devouring Hu Ba's spiritual energy, Qin Feng's complexion turned for the better. The spiritual energy in his qi also gradually recovered. You can devour other people's spiritual energy for your own use? At this moment, everyone present was dumbfounded. Everyone's spiritual energy had its own special attribute. It was different from other people's spiritual energy and could not coexist. Unless there was an absolute suppression of strength, otherwise, when two types of spiritual energy collided in the body, the only outcome would be to explode and die. However, after devouring Hu Ba's spiritual energy, Qin Feng did not feel any discomfort. Instead, his injuries healed a little. Qin Feng smiled and did not explain. The outside world was vast and endless, and there were all kinds of strange things. He did not need to hide it. Although this method was strange and evil, it was not an evil technique in the outside world. He walked over to Chen Wuzhou's corpse and devoured his spiritual energy as well. The spirit qi of 2 9th stage Heaven Realm Masters was absolutely vigorous, almost allowing his exhausted spirit qi to recover to its peak. His move shocked Yiwu, Xiao and I, and the others. For an ordinary person, it was impossible to recover so quickly without a few days of spiritual energy. However, Qin Feng only used a few minutes to recover most of his spiritual energy. Of course, this was purely the recovery of spiritual energy and had nothing to do with his injuries. Therefore, even if Qin Feng recovered his spiritual energy, he was still seriously injured. However, with the help of spiritual energy recovery, his injuries recovered slightly. Now that he was at the peak of the half-step heaven realm, the spiritual energy of those of the same realm or those weaker than him was of no help to him. Therefore, Qin Feng was too lazy to devour their spiritual energy. "Since the 9 Yin fortress attacked us, we can't let them live," Xiao and I said coldly. Everyone nodded. This time, if it were not for Qin Feng, they would have all died because of the Nine fortress. Therefore, they naturally would not let this group of bandits go. You guys recuperate here first. We'll be back soon. Yi Wu and Xiao and I interrogated a Nine fortress powerhouse about the location of their headquarters before he died. With their strength, they quickly entered the Nine fortress territory. After losing the protection of the powerhouses, there was no resistance. The second largest bandit group in the unfolding mountain range was flattened, and all the bandits were killed. While they were attacking the Nine fortress, Qin Feng and the others were not idle. They found the Black Water Mountain's treasury and divided the Purple Stairs. The Black Water Mountain had stood tall in the unfolding mountain range for so many years, so their collection was naturally rich. They had all kinds of spiritual pills, spiritual techniques, and battle skills. Although this battle was thrilling, they had defeated two of the largest bandit groups in a row, so their harvest could be considered plentiful. When they were dividing the spoils of war between the two bandit groups, Qin Feng collected all the gold, silver, and jewels that they did not care about. Your ambition is too low. The group looked at Qin Feng and was speechless. What they cared about were high-level spiritual techniques, battle skills, exotic flowers, herbs, and spiritual pills. This guy, on the other hand, was only interested in those gold, silver, and jewels that were not very useful for cultivation. After collecting the last fist-sized piece of gold, Qin Feng clapped his hands and said righteously, "These things that you don't care about are an eyesore here. All right, now that it's quiet, let's divide the spoils." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.